The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you.
What's good, everybody? What's cracking with y'all, man? I'm GG, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, man. The place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chases, man. And before I get things started, the first thing I want to do is give a shout out to all the haters out there. Hope y'all passing a good afternoon. And we ain't got very much people joining us here right now, but if you do happen to come in, man, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe button, and the bell notification button so you can stay on top of what's cracking here on the Green Gorilla channel, man. And as I always do, the first thing I want to do is give a shout out to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel, and then proceed to the business at hand. So let's take care of that process. First things first, man. Brotherly Love, Gold Professor, Seven Coast Dojo, Lee Ways, AKs and Curtains, Press Start, H-Town, Roguish the Billmonger, Lord Hamal, and Number 4. Big up to y'all, man. Big up to Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Gabinga O, Cutting Up with the Jones, Zanko 1, D. Scott, Julius Ferguson, Path God 74, Black Swerve 404, Pete Rock 496, and Tahuti of New Comet. Big up to y'all. Big up to Aaron Peters, Bernolas, Dardar, Michael Ross, Vincent Lindsay, Michael Pierce, Beautiful Trauma, Quiz the Poet, Black Quizzard 80OS, Jazz Tech, and Shadow Observer. Big up to y'all. Big up to Sugar T, Artisan MC, Nasiana, Kyle J. Sura, Kareem, Troy Warren, Jeff R., Mrs. KP Bailey, Ricky Dawson, Alan Wiley, and The Face. Big up to y'all. Big up to Mantis on Break, Life of Commerce, Truth 7360, Marvin Evans, A. Wilson's Ghost, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Mark Holt, and John J. Big up. Big up to Afro Troop TV, Adam, BGS Ivmore, Ignatz Mouse, Brian Peaks, Papa Dida, Scott Haywood, Black Uru Strikes, Dr. Tree 33, Leroy Honeycutt, and Super Tech. Big up. Big up to 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, Karen S., Anthony Davis, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean 955, Charles Gilmore 3, Patricia Colley, Greg, and Barry Little. Big up to y'all. Big up to Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Cameron 87, Doc LaRock, Mark Swift, Odd Collar, Donald Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, and Mr. Blue Collar. Big up to y'all. Big up to I'm Just Jules, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, and The Revelator. Big up. Big up to Aaron Infinite, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Kalan Jakala, Hostile Adept, and WPR1. And I can't forget my brothers in heaven, Force Windu, David Carroll, and Kevin Samuels. Big up to all y'all, man. On the Patreon side, I'd like to give a shout out to Jay Live, Rashawn Phillips, Sorrels, Keith Bass Jr., Nick, Malcolm Smith, Rock One, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, I Am the Light of My Father, Waffle Weave, William Joyner, Tyrone Hampton, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Anu 219, Presura Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Adrian Hicks, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi Momal, and Asangwa. Big up to all of y'all, man. Thank you so much for your ongoing help and support. You deserve a round of applause, as well as all the fanfare. And if you are wondering how you could also support the Green Gorilla channel on an ongoing basis, well, brothers and sisters, here's how you do it. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, Straight up, no chaser. Today I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. All right, man, we're back. I'm GG. You're tuned into the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men are allowed to speak freely, straight up with no chases. And it seems nowadays we can't do that without, becoming humbled by exterior forces. But anyway, we are not going to abide by the principle of sheepishness, obsequiousness, and toadiness. We coming out swinging. So I've brought guests along. I got my brother, Nameless Protagonist, and I also have Admiral Smoke, also known as Sand Dogg. What's cracking, brethren?
To the chat and the folks on the panel. Os.
That's right, man. What's up with you, Sand Dogg? I can't hear you, brother. What's up, man? You there?
Yeah, I'm here, man. It's my 45th birthday, man. Say, You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Rude Dog. Happy birthday, brother.
Happy birthday, friend.
Salutations, man. And, much love to you, man, on your born day. 45, man. You starting to get arthritis in them knees, ain't
you? Though, man, so far so good, man. I stayed active and mobile, man. So so far so good, man. I'm about to get these rollers for my perm, though.
Oh shit! Hey, I want you to try to do something, Sand Dog, if you can for me. Periodically when you come on the show, I can't see your icon. And I can see it on StreamYard, but I'm not able to see it on YouTube at the current moment as I watch it from another computer. So try to go out and come back in and see if that rectifies the issue. And if it doesn't, we'll just proceed as normal anyway. But let's see if that does anything at all, if that works. If it doesn't work, oh, so be it, man. I'll just put the branding up and they'll be able to see your name anyway. But it just helps to have an icon up so people can see you anyway. But so try that and see what happens. Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to watch your video, man. I tried to watch all of it and I wasn't able to get through the entirety of it. But some of the things that you were saying, Nameless, about hive theory.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things, that I derived from it is that the aimlessness of the average American citizen is just outright deplorable. Like there is nothing that people firmly convict themselves to, such that they could have some sort of purpose and meaning. There is no meaning. The only meaning that people have is what the culture at large gives them, and and the media gives them. So we can't think any farther than, or any more deeply than, what we're programmed to think about.
You default to your biological factory settings.
Yeah, well, shit, food, drink, and water, huh?
Right.
And sex.
And I mean, all you have to do is take a look at who benefits from that scenario, getting into the potentiality of a technocracy and how that can be exploited in a capitalistic environment. Which sounds to me like what they were talking about in the early 1900s anyway, which is just weird how history repeats itself, right?
Right. But anyway, man, let's get to the subject matter at hand. That did not work, Admiral Smoke. I don't know what to do in order to rectify this. I know you're in a different country, so that might have something to do with it. I just don't know. Maybe perhaps you need to switch out your profile pic. If you have another one, you might want to try that. I know maybe you've messed around with doing something like that before, but I don't want to get too sidebarred or sidetracked by all that. I'm just letting you know that the avatar is not showing on YouTube itself. So, but at any rate, let's move forward, man, shall we?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you take over and kind of give us a recap of what you've been doing thus far and how this particular installment fits into that. So
Okay. So this is changing the narrative, right? Again, across the space, we have a break between generations. And so the break between generations happens from the fact that, uh, we have never necessarily uh, put forward things that will educate Black people on a national scale about our complete history in the United States. And so because of that, you have like a lot of false narratives that, we just came over here from Africa, we were taken as slaves, all we did was just lay down and take it, and our older people never done anything for us, or we're not doing anything for ourselves now, and here we are. And that's completely not the truth. And so basically, we started with, starting with the colony of Virginia. And from the colony of Virginia, we go into the slave codes, or Bacon's Rebellion, then the slave codes, and then from the slave codes, the black codes, Jim Crow. This is what we've been covering. And basically, we've been talking about how African Americans, for the most part, have been disenfranchised. And for many people, hopefully this also shows you why our community would deserve reparations, because just leaving Jim Crow, right? So you would have, when we covered last time, we were in the Great Migration, right? And so again, I'm not going to go back deep into the Great Migration, but for the most part, the Great Migration happens somewhat after a financial panic in the early 1900s. And then when you're in World War One, when the soldiers demobilize and they come home, the black and white soldiers, let me back up a bit. While the soldiers were gone for World War One, you had a lot of industrialists go into the South and recruit black people to work. So during that time, black people started to come out of the South for one, better economic opportunity and housing opportunities with these industrial jobs, and then also to escape the terrorism of Jim Crow that's happening during that time, especially with the second iteration of the Ku Klux Klan. And so black people are leaving. At first, it didn't bother the Southerners too much that black people were leaving. It kind of balanced things out. But after a while, Southern companies began to suffer from the labor shortages. And they would try to keep black workers there by either offering them the same wages in the North or more, kind of like easing up on some of their Jim Crow laws, and addressing some of the issues that the black workers had with racism. But that didn't stop it. And so, people from the South became upset. The fact that black people just kept going north, despite the labor shortages that were happening there. And so they began to employ agents to kind of demobilize black people, prevent them from getting on the trains and buses that went north, and then also to kind of track what was happening in the North in general, the wages, unionization, and everything else. And at that time, you're starting to get into the rise of black nationalism. So even Southern companies wouldn't cash the checks of black people who went north or who had planned to go north, and fear that they would start to fund some of their black nationalistic agendas, right? So this is all happening. And now, people are coming back from World War One. There's competition now in the job market and housing. So you start to have clashes between white nationalist groups and also African Americans and immigrants, once you get into the major cities. And so this now will kick off what is famously called, the Red Summer, right? So what is this? About, 1919, going into the 1900s. And so during the Red Summer, basically you have all of these racial incidents, again, that are motivated by the downturn in the economy, and the fact that white workers, be it if they were already in the United States or European immigrants coming in, they don't want to compete or coexist with black workers in the same space. So, you know, they're competing for labor, they're competing for housing, you know, and many different groups of white people begin to form labor unions as a way to keep black people out, because the issue that they have with black people is that we work for less wages, and we're ruining the job market for them, right? And so,
shout out to the AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations. I know what they are. Go ahead, Brother Sandog.
Exactly.
And so shout out to Barry Little for the donation, my brother. I appreciate that, man, in a big way. Thank you.
And so now, again, so, you know, you're walking into that. And so one of the more famous incidents that happened will be the Elaine massacre in Arkansas, right?
What's good, everybody? You know, I'm the G with a PhD.
Oh, you gotta. I apologize for that, man.
The place where black men can express themselves freely. Straight up, no chaser.
Sorry about that,
Today
man.
I want to introduce.
I hit a button on the stream deck inadvertently, my brother. I apologize for that interruption. Go ahead.
No problem. Right. And so now, you get what's called, one of the things that happened during the Red Summer, right? You get the Elaine massacre, right? Where you would have 100 African-American farmers who would meet with Robert Hill. Robert Hill is the founder of Progressive Farmers and Household Unions of America, right? And so basically at that time, black people in the South, to make it easy, we were being ripped off by the white landowners during sharecropping, obviously so, right? So we would get charged this, you know, exorbitant prices for whatever we were buying from them, materials, clothing, and everything else. And so they'll give you some large price, but they would never itemize the cost, right? And so he was organizing to make sure that we would get our fair deal, you know, out of sharecropping. And so this obviously agitated the white population. And so you would have conflicts between the black population and the white population. And this would end up in a massacre with the mob of white people, along with probably local law enforcement and the U.S. military that went in there and killed probably about more than 200 people, right? So they go in there, they kill about more than 200 people, you know, for the sake of them wanting to have to operate or deal with the white sharecroppers on fair and equitable terms, right? And so you'll get events like this, which takes us again to where we are now, you know, with the civil rights movement. And so even here, and I'm going to bring up individual figures probably within, probably for the next conversation that we have. But what I wanted to do, especially for the sake of time, is to cover significant events, you know, that would happen in that time frame. So now you're getting the rise of black nationalism, right? And so initially, what you would have is smaller organizations like the Niagara Movement with W.E.B. Du Bois. And now the thing with W.E.B. Du Bois, now when you look at civil rights, at least from Sandog's perspective, right, you're gonna end up with a three-way split on how to kind of deal with the problems that African Americans have, right?
Now, Sandog, let me say something here.
Okay.
Because while you do the general outline, I'm not going to call it an outline. While you progress the story, there's a particular entity I want to hyper focus on.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say this first and foremost. Gigi, my apologies, but fuck this dude. Let me go ahead and put a link in the chat here for you real quick. Because none of what we're talking about likely would have occurred the way it did if this individual had not gone above and beyond the call of any duty that was legally called for and accountable for with this man. And he's who I call the Donzo of the black community, J. Edgar Hoover. Because this is the exact time period he's active and takes the institution that was formed during Reconstruction that had the objective of protecting black male interests, black people's interests on a political scale to make sure justice was carried out, i.e. the Department of Justice. And they form the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And J. Edgar Hoover is put in charge with little to no oversight. That instance of the Red Summer you just said, he managed to flip the general narrative of that entire instance. And in the name of trying to stop, quote, communism, claim that individuals practicing Black nationalism were in some way going to usurp capitalist rule and subvert the US government. And that became full-blown justification to demonize Black people further on a political scale. One thing I really want to make clear is that during this time period, again, little to no oversight, followed by the fact that many of the individuals who would be recruited into his organization, by definition, in order to get in, most of them had to know some Black folks. They had to know some Black folks. They had to have these individuals on payroll. And let me just digress slightly with a little bit of context. The difference between an officer and an agent is this. An officer is an individual who is placed in charge of some modality from the actual government. They are responsible for training them. They provide resources, and their objective is to report back. Agents are individuals that officers get in contact with, and they provide for them compensation financially or other means, or find other ways to coerce them in order to acquire information, which is then returned by the officer. This is the difference between a FBI officer versus an FBI agent. And the same modality is expressed and understood with regards to any intelligence agency, such as the Central Intelligence Bureau the Central Intelligence Agency, aka the CIA, which will show up later. But more specifically, the FBI at this time handles things on a domestic level, and they cooperate in the name or in conjunction with local law enforcement. So your federal, state, and local law enforcement can utilize the FBI in tandem to provide and acquire information. And it's around this time period also that the concept of plainclothes officers gets introduced by J. Edgar Hoover, and they're employed first in the South. They play a critical role in usurping a lot of the events that Sandog is about to talk about. And we need to understand and make clear that the very first FBI agent was designed to try to take out and subvert Garvey and his movement, starting with the entire concept of Black nationalism as we know it. But go ahead, Sandog. I wanted that in the background while you continued.
Facts. So now it is, again, it's not even so. And then you're going to start to see other things come into play, right? And so now you're going into, and I'm bringing it up. So just to bring up, like, for example, the NAACP. So that you're kind of moving with the NAACP. So, okay, pause. Let me back up. So now within the civil rights movement, you're going to have, at least from Sandog's perspective, 3 schools of thought in terms of the way that Black people need to move. So from Sandog's perspective, all of these different views should have worked in concert. But I believe that what happens, again, within Black people or the Black world, you heard me mention this before, is that maybe some of us may have Messiah concepts in terms of where we believe that whatever solution we put forward is the right solution. But realistically speaking, you solve problems many times, or complex problems many times, with several different solutions working in tandem. And so first you would get W.E.B. Du Bois, who would be responsible for founding the NAACP. And I want to mention to you that the NAACP was founded with W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, right, a former slave, who became a journalist, who very well articulated the horrors of terrorism in the South, but even though she was a feminist or a suffragist in the female movement, she was heavily critical, at least to my knowledge of her, of the stances between white women and Black women, right? To the point where she had a direct confrontation with one of the leading feminists from the white female side named Frances Willard, right? And so Frances Willard was like, the comment she made was that, again, Black people, we multiply like the locusts of Egypt. The liquor store is the center of our community, right? And pretty much, we are a threat to public decency, right? And so again, so Ida B. Wells again confronted this woman, right? Again, she confronted this woman in terms of her stance on Black people, and what made Ida B. Wells, to my knowledge, a threat was because Ida B. Wells, although she was interested in women's rights, she was mostly interested in what will advance Black people. And so I believe that from my stance, this is something to certain white feminists, especially the ones that will be from the South, the Christian-based organizations. This is where they would have an issue with it, right? Then you would have.
Let me just say something real quick about that. Let me interject really quickly. So, ultimately, what Ida B. Wells was calling for Frances Willard to do was to publicly condemn lynching.
Yes.
Which it seemed, Willard was refusing to do. She didn't want to come out and make that hard a stance against lynching. Yeah. And so therefore they got into a war of words. And I'll leave a link in the chat that'll give you some sort of details about what that's all about. Okay? Just go ahead on, bro.
Yeah. Okay. So now, right? So now, again, you'll have, so Ida B. Wells is a founding member of the NAACP. Then there will be a woman by the name of Mary White Ovington. Again, was a white lady, inspired by Frederick Douglass, right? And then also you would have another gentleman by the name of Moorfield Story, who was a pacifist, an anti-imperialist, and an egalitarian. And so the NAACP will be formed, with basically what we would call today, to much of an extent, white liberals, right? So this would be the NAACP, and so everybody, or not everybody, but W.E.B. Du Bois will present to Black America, or America at large, the concept of the talented 10th, right? A select group of elite people that will be able to kind of lift up and elevate the race. Then you would have Marcus Garvey coming out of Jamaica, who formed the United Negro Improvement Association, right? Also the UNIA ACL, the African Communities League, right? And so basically, where Garvey and Du Bois may split is that Garvey wanted to concentrate more or less on the problems of average Black people or everyday Black people. So it just simply wasn't about the elite. And so what he preached was that Black people needed to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and this will come, for the most part, for Black people possessing or having their own state or their own land. W.E.B. Du Bois and Garvey will meet in Jamaica. And, Garvey, for the most part, thought that W.E.B. Du Bois would be somebody that he can work with. But unfortunately for the both of them, I don't think that W.E.B. Du Bois was really too interested in working with Garvey or helping to come to a common ground. And so to Nameless's point, you would get J. Edgar Hoover, and this Cointelpro was designed initially. The original intent of it was to eradicate the growth of communist ideas in the United States. And then J. Edgar Hoover used that, in a sense, to attack Black nationalist movements, right? And so the whole idea was to disrupt and to destroy the reputation, of these movements by labeling them communists. Also, today you would kind of see the legacy of that, of people who now get arrested for being Black identity extremists, right? And so that's some people will argue that that's a legacy of COINTELPRO. And so,
and I want to really emphasize the fact that, because when you're talking about COINTELPRO, again, this was not, I don't know, I can only think of Naruto references because it's exactly what Anbu or Root would have been to Anbu. The fact of the matter is it was illegal for COINTELPRO to exist. It was not anything that was on any official documentation. It was 100% black budget. It was behind the scenes. It was hush hush. The FBI's our original goal was to simply investigate. And on the surface, J. Edgar Hoover, you have to remember at the time, has the ear of everybody, the president, everyone, all the way up into the 60s and 70s. All J. Edgar Hoover had to do was hop on the phone and he had the president on the line whenever he wanted. And we need to understand his perspective on this and the whole entire Red Scare idea that was happening, at the time. Part of what was moving American politics was really rooted in this whole anti-communism, communist ideology. I mean, even the way J. Edgar Hoover looked at the Bill of Rights, absolutely insane. He's quoted as just simply seeing the Bill of Rights as, quote, literature favorable to Russia in opposition to U.S. foreign policy. Like, they were re-examining the Constitution. And since he's in this judicial branch that acts like it has executive power and is functioning like a CIA before the CIA, the kind of things that he's able to do and influence and the kinds of people that he can reach and touch as a result of that begins to influence some of these organizations that Sandog is talking about, including the NAACP. I'm going to say especially the NAACP.
Correct. And so
let me just be honest here. Okay, so there were many black people, during, the time of the Great Depression who were attracted to communist ideas. Okay, now, I mean, you got to think, though. Let's just be honest here, man. You got black people in the South being exploited by sharecropping. Recently, there had been slaves, not too long ago, maybe 60 years, 70 years removed from slavery. And then also you're dealing with the Great Depression. All these factors together, man. Why wouldn't they be attracted to communism? The idea that they need to set up their own state, they need not be exploited. Why wouldn't they be attracted to this idea?
Exactly.
Namely the people shouldn't be exploited for their labor. So, like today, the average black person who, is anti-communist, I get it to some degree. I mean, you don't want to be exploited, and the problem of free riding conceptually, comes to mind. You don't want people to be on the dime and loafing and chiseling and extorting you while they just sit back like fat cats and reap the benefits of your hard work. But I mean, let's just be frank about this. Like, what do you think the institution of slavery actually is? Even though it's a capitalist institution, I mean, it is all about making money. Slavery is, okay? But it's about making money at slaves' expense. What do you think drove the sugar and the cotton industries in the South? It was slave labor that did it, okay? Yep. So you got a mass group of black people who had been extorted and exploited for centuries, okay? Well, at least a couple of centuries, okay? And so why wouldn't they be attracted to communism? I would be attracted to it my damn self. I'm just being honest, okay? Now, there are people out there who are principally opposed to the whole notion of communism. But I mean, let's just be frank about this right now. Black people ain't got no money for real. I'm just saying, like, what wealth do black people have in mass in comparison to the larger white demographic? And then not only that, how much money does the white demographic have in terms of wealth in comparison to the top, earners or wealth owners in the United States? Not very much. Okay, so I'm not saying I'm a communist, but I am saying that during the time, I could definitely commiserate with a group of people who would be attracted to these kind of ideas. I'm just keeping it a buck here, okay? And so, of course, Russia is like a major competitor with the United States about what way of life economically and socially, the West would head in, okay? And, we're still dealing with this shit right now. Yep. Like, yep. A lot of people don't understand, man, like these two powers are still competing with one another in terms of propaganda and in terms of geographical land grabs, like who's going to control what, where, and have an influence on how trade and commerce is executed. So just something to think about. But go ahead, bro.
Well, let me just say this
before
too.
You do that, before y'all do
that,
I want to give a shout out to Sam C. Okay. I also want to give a shout out to Rasheed Barnes. I want to give a shout out to Heru in Apocalypse and Cedric Spears. And I want to give a shout out to Barry Little. You know, I put their names up, but I haven't had the opportunity to actually shout them out. So yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be attracted to, you know, this kind of ideology at a time when, you know, black people were exploited so heavily and thoroughly as they were. But, and also shout out to BGS for trying to at least, you know, get people to get the likes up and to donate. Please share, like, and subscribe. And if you can, support the show. But having said all that, Sand Dog and Nameless, please commence.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize the point you just made, Gigi, because people don't really understand how African Americans were being seen internationally. In particular, a lot of countries that did support communist governments. In fact, that may warrant a conversation in and of its own right one day, but just understand that Russia had Black America in its crosshairs for an impetus of addressing the greater conversation with American politics. And you can begin to see the political motive that someone might have in characterizing, quote, radical Black leaders and the entire concept of civil rights as a whole as being an impetus for communism. And this is how it gets framed to the public and begins to shift some of the political conversation on the right, which again helps polarize people moving away from the right and more so towards the left politically. And I'm sure Sandog will start covering that. But for your records, you know, here's just one little instance that kind of covers some of the instances Russia just was parroting right alongside events that were taking place in Black America in the South. But Sandog, you can go ahead, fam.
Yeah. So no, I'm fair. But again, kind of coming into the point that Gigi and Nameless was talking about, right? So now when you look at Marcus Garvey and he starts the Black Star shipping line, right? And so the Black Star shipping line ultimately, right, again, with the help of J. Edgar Hoover, ultimately will be undone. So he has a Black agent who goes by the name of 800, and basically that's his job. His job is to go in, is to, you know, report on what Garvey is doing and to, for the most part, to ruin whatever his plans are, right? And so when you look at the Black Star shipping line, this agent, along with the captain, I forgot his name, it's on the tip of his tongue, but Marcus Garvey hires a Black shipping captain. And basically, he was also betrayed by that Black shipping captain because what they would do is they would overcharge Garvey in the organization for the ships. So the ships will either be, you know, they will probably were vessels that needed to be dry docked, right? For those of you who know what a dry dock is again, when you take a vessel out of the water and you maintenance it, you know, to make sure that it's up to par. And so basically the captain betrayed Garvey by taking vessels that needed extensive repairs that probably shouldn't be bought in the first place by claiming that they were seaworthy. So what happens is they will overcharge Garvey for the vessel and then he will get a kickback for it, right? And so these types of things will be the beginnings of the undoing with Garvey, to include the fact that, again, without the support of people like W.E.B. Du Bois, who would criticize Garvey, right? You know, he would, for the most part, he would kind of be left. He would either be left or exposed to areas that weren't his, or be exposed by areas that weren't his brand of expertise, right? And so there were some people who say that Garvey had somewhat of a dictatorial way of the way that he did things. And so as a result of this holding up true, this possibly could be probably the beginning of his undoing, right? And so, again, you have W.E.B. Du Bois, who has the talented 10th outlook on life. Marcus Garvey, up you mighty race, the everyday, again, the everyday black person. Africa is for the Africans. And, we're going to pick up, we're going to be self-sufficient, and we're going to pick up and go back to Africa. And interesting enough, Marcus Garvey had worked out a deal with Liberia to purchase land for African Americans to return to. And then strangely, in the 11th hour, Firestone, who makes the tires, came in and offered them an insane amount of price for access to the materials that exist in Liberia that allows them to make their tires. So magically, out of the blue, this is what happened with the Liberian program or the deal that Garvey was setting up in Africa. To include the fact that you had, thousands of members across the world, people in Latin America, or countries in Latin America, countries in Africa that also supported the Garvey movement, and one of significance, being Cuba, right, that supported this. And so, like I said, you find it very ironic between the sabotage of the Black Star shipping line and the sabotage of the Liberian program in terms of what Marcus Garvey was trying to achieve before Hoover and his agents would kind of trump him up on mail fraud to get him deported, back to Jamaica, right? And so, at least from Sandogg's perspective, this is how I'm seeing some of the philosophies of the civil rights movement that's shaping out. W.E.B. Du Bois with the talented tip, Garvey, and then Garvey's that we have to go back to Africa. Then you would get after Garvey, you would get a gentleman, or during that time, another gentleman by the name of Booker T. Washington, right? And so Booker T. Washington will have something called, again, the Atlanta Compromise, right? And for the most part, the Atlanta Compromise was a way of saying, you know what, or at least from what I understand is what he wanted to do was he wanted to kind of, acquiesce in a sense to white rule, and the idea of that would take some of white people's pressure away from black people. So for example, the whole thing about voting, for example, right? So if black people were to say, you know what, hey, we're willing to live under white rule, right? And, in exchange for, we want education, we want jobs, we want to be free from terrorism, all these things. And so basically what Booker T. Washington, from my perspective, was looking to do with Black America was, in a sense, set us up pretty much the way the Asian community operates now. So if you think about it, right, statistically speaking, the Asian community doesn't vote, right? But they are one of the economic, they're one of the higher achieving or economic powerhouse communities within the United States. So from Sandogg's perspective, and I can be fact checked in the chat or the brothers that are here on the panel, is that what Booker T. Washington wanted was, in a sense, for African Americans ultimately to fly under the radar and operate much the way we see Asian communities, operate today, right? When you're telling your children, hey, you could hate me 2 generations from now, but you're going to be doctors, and you're going to be neurosurgeons and engineers, and all that other stuff. So from his perspective, right, this is what African Americans needed to do. We needed to build an economic power base in our own infrastructure before we can start going to fight for other things. And so this is what the stance was.
Yeah, so the way I see it is, I'm just gonna keep it a buck here. This is the Green Gorilla channel. We can speak how we want to speak, right?
Yeah.
So Booker T. Washington wanted black people to move like Jews move.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? It's like, okay, let's develop an industry. Let's become, let's develop an infrastructure and an industry and a know-how without making all this damn noise about how we need equality and parity with white people. Let them do them. Let white people do them, but let's, be valuable and critical to the economy, or develop our own in such a way that, we don't have to worry about their politics. Now, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois had a different idea. You know, he was struggling for equality and recognition and acceptance. Whereas, you know, Garvey, I mean, you know, he was like, let's go back to Africa, but those bad investments, you know, in the shipping line, amongst other things, you know, eventually led to the organization's demise. But I mean, this is what I will say about, you know, the Garvey debacle. It's one thing to buy one fucked up ship, but dog, you bought two, bruh.
Yeah,
you bought two fucked up ships, bruh.
Yeah,
you bought two of them, bruh. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, once you know, they say, fuck me once, shame on you. Fuck me twice, shame on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, bruh, you got hoodwinked twice, bruh. You know what I'm saying? So it gives me reservations about whether or not he actually was involved in the debacle itself. Like, dude, how can you make two bad investments? You spent 165 G's on a ship that only should have been worth about 25 G's. Then you do the same thing again, bro. Not to knock, you know, the spirit behind what he was trying to accomplish and what he was trying to do, but come on, bro. How can you make two fumbles? And black people are the ones who, you know, predominantly funded that organization from a grassroots level. So you talk about crowdfunding. I mean, you're talking about people who were able to squeeze blood from a turnip and give people hope. So, you know, and now a lot of black people are reticent. They don't believe that people are sincere when they say, let's pool our money together and let's make X, Y, or Z happen. They just have reservations because of the sour taste that they experienced in the past. So that's why people are such skeptics when it comes to let's pool our money and our resources together and let's make something happen. You know what I'm saying?
Sadly, that's a recurring theme for a while. And, you know, because we know what's going on here at the time. There's a lot of pressure going on. And, you know, even now, this is around the time the Noble Drew Ali showing up, putting together the Moorish Science Temple. And you're getting alternatives to a lot of these movements that are being presented here. I didn't want to get too deep in that, but here's a link to just some of the slides. This is taken from Princeton's library. It's got a list of all the different FBI files that were put up officially due to the Freedom of Information Act and all of that. You know, you can see some of these microfilms of who they were keeping in contact with, and you'll find that this list of FBI files is pretty much damn near a timeline of our topic today. They were looking at all of these things. All of our movements were seen. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying shout out to the Moorish Science Temple, which is really large in St. Louis. You know, like we call each other Mo's all the time. Like, what up, Mo?
We do that in DC too. Yeah, what's good, Mo?
yeah. It's a shout out to the Moors. You know what I'm saying? Right. But like, you got to think. Here's a group of people, man, who are so worried about us based upon what they did to us. They're running counterinsurgency measures in the United States, spending shit tons of money.
Illegally.
You know, to monitor our activities when all we want to do is work. We weren't even looking for handouts. That's the funny thing about all of this. Like, you know, black men during this time were not making the case that the government owes us anything other than to treat us equally as citizens.
Facts.
They weren't like, okay, well, we need so many resources from you. We were like, leave us the fuck alone. Allow us to operate as men and women without all of the terror and all of the derision that you're directing towards us. So, you know, I think Dogg is right in this regard. These men should have been able to get together, even though they had differences about how they should move forward, and basically form some sort of strategic modus vivendi, you know, some temporary compromise so that they could each, you know, use whatever that they could to get what they wanted to improve the quality of the lot of black people's lives as a whole. Like all of the ideological commitments and marrying to ideals is what fucks us up all the time. And you know, one of the things I'm aware of, man, you got, thinking of a chess game, you got different pieces on the board, but they all have to work collectively in order to protect the king. And they have different ways of moving, and they all support and buttress each other on the chessboard. But what we do is we just step out foolishly. Like we'll send a fucking knight out, no protection, no nothing, just aggressive without, working in tandem and working in concert. I just, it's our unity is an issue for us. But go ahead.
Correct.
Man.
Because if you look at Booker T. Washington, right? So Booker T. Washington platform produces the talented 10th, or at least that economic and some of that economic base in the United States, right? That W.E.B. Du Bois is talking about. And then, because remember, his movement also had factories that gave a lot of jobs, right? Restaurants, grocery stores, and everything else. And so now you got Booker T's Washington. What was the organization Booker T made that turned into the Chamber of Commerce?
Tuskegee Institute, right?
No, it's
it was from the Negro Improvement League.
Negro Improvement League, but it's on the tip of my tongue. It was the organization that he made about Negro business. I'll look it up because I'm talking now. But it will become the Chamber of Commerce, or it would give the U.S. government the idea for the Chamber of Commerce.
About the National Negro Business League or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the National Negro Business League. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, like I said, when you look at these ideas that these guys have, now you're starting to see how within each of their ideas, there was a lot of synergy that could have been created between the three of them, right? But again, the problem of a messiah complex of where one guy thinks that his idea is the complete, it's the complete, revelation. And so now you're in the you fast forward to 1954 and 1968. So now you're in the civil rights era, right? You have President Eisenhower. He's desegregating the military. He's desegregating the military. And so domestically, right now, with the civil rights, you're starting to see all of these big pushes, right? So you're getting desegregation of the military, desegregation of schools, right? Desegregation of schools and everything else. So this is where desegregation begins to take place. But then you're starting to have a lot of pushback, from the southern states, obviously, right? And for their obvious reasons. And I want to take this moment and I want you all to remember that if anybody ever tells you, right, that Black people don't deserve reparations, you have to understand that chattel slavery set the precedent for all of this. Because once you go from chattel slavery, what happens after chattel slavery? Are you free? No, you go right into the Black codes, and the Black codes are nothing more than an enforcement of slave codes that are designed to prohibit the mobility of freed Black people. Right? So you have it there. And then you go from Black codes into Jim Crow, right? And I want you to really think about this, man. And so Jim Crow, for the most part, runs from the late 1870s. I would argue to say to some extent it still exists now, but it runs from the 1870s pretty much all the way up to the 1970s, right? Just about. And I'm celebrating my 45th birthday today. I was born in 1977, right? So when you look at somebody like Green Gorilla, who's just a couple of years older than me, right? Or people who are early Gen Xers, I'm a late Gen Xer. So people who are early Gen Xers were still going through the desegregation process. Right? And so let
me say this. Let me say something about this, right? And this, I can say something about this. I can ask, older people out here who are older than I am. Okay, I'm 51 years old. Okay, I was born in 71, right? we were given the talk, okay, by our parents, but they never in a detailed and in a meticulous way told us about the things that actually occurred in their lives that they had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if it was because they wanted to spare us the pressure of it, or, you know, if they wanted to kind of spare us the debilitating conditions that they suffered through or whatever. I don't know, but they did a poor job at educating us and giving us, you know, some sort of unified vision. I'm always like spellbound by the fact that, you know, my uncle and my mother never sat me down and told me about their experiences. Like, what? Why not? Why would you not explain this shit to us and let us know in no uncertain terms what we're dealing with? That's like being, you know, in a hostile territory, and you know that, you know, you're a young person, but, you know, you can't really actually be on the field. But like, say, for example, in Vietnam, like, that I don't know where my allegiance should lie as a kid. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't, like, I need to be sitting in on the meetings, but they weren't even meeting. They were just, I don't know what they were doing, man. I have no idea what, you know, my forebears were doing, bro. I think they fumbled the ball, man, on educating us, man. And they sent us straight to white people, man, to be educated. I just don't get it, man. Like, I'm spellbound by it. Like, why wouldn't you take this opportunity to make us strong and to educate us and to give us, you know, insight on how to maneuver through this grid? What the fuck were y'all thinking? I know my father talks to me about it from time to time, but like deep-seated, like, just teaching, they dropped the ball on it, man. And no, I get you don't dump that experience on kids, but the reality is we're going to experience it anyway. It's best to have knowledge of what we're facing, as opposed to, and I could get, you don't tell a 7 or a 6-year-old some shit like this, but by the time you're 12 or 13 years old, man, it's time for you to be in the know. It's time for you to understand what you face. That's just my opinion on this.
We were literally at war. I mean, I don't know any other way to describe that.
Like, that's like being in Vietnam and you like 12 or 13 years old as a boy, and you don't know what the fuck you should be doing. You don't even, like, you're naive to everything around you. That's not wise.
At a certain point, it's almost negligence.
Put it this way. Like, one thing I want you to be aware of, like, okay, just thinking about or reflecting back on a prior civilization, right? Like Sparta. Okay? Them boys were stripped away from their mothers at 7 years old, man. And basically going through rigorous training from 7 on up to adulthood. Like, it's time for you to be a member of the military class. It's time for you to learn and be indoctrinated on the ways of keeping this damn culture and this civilization going. What did we get? We got fucking Charlie Brown and Batman and Voltron and shit like that. I'm just saying, like, in the grand scheme of things, is that shit important? Like, is our childhood years and nostalgia worth more than us knowing how to handle the system? I'm just saying. I'm just spellbound by our ineptness. That's all I'm saying. But carry on, man. I'm not gonna say any more.
No. I would say this, Gigi. I would say this because me and one of the other bros had this conversation, and I would say, well, to your point, right? You know, for them, there was probably a degree of shame or embarrassment of what they went through. And more than likely, some were probably hoping that you are now entering better times. But what I would say is this, and it's something that we overlook in terms of decisions. So you have to, especially when you get into and this is what I was saying about the fact that if you go back into history, there has always been several different Black Americas. And what happens is that those Black Americas don't have cohesion. So when you look at these three civil rights leaders, right, be it Booker T. Washington, the guys that I said for the most part, from my perspective, right, most people, some way, somehow, are following the philosophies of these three men, right? Whether it's Martin Luther King that comes after, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad with the Nation of Islam, one way or another, you're following these three men. And so what you have to remember is that for many of us, right, again, because these guys didn't work in concert, we all suffer. Fam, one of the things you got to remember is this. Okay, for me, I have, a master's level education, but my parents stopped at high school. And before then, my grandpappy had a 5th grade education.
But let me say this: the only reason I'm indicting the generation directly before ours is because the average age of a civil rights protester was damn near a fucking teenager.
Facts. Okay, facts.
Okay, so that's the only reason I'm making the statement that I'm making. So it was okay for you to put your body on the line to be educated about what's going on culturally and politically with your demographic. But on the other hand, we're supposed to forget all of that. We're not supposed to be, do you actually believe that you actually fulfilled the goal of reaching Martin Luther King Jr.'s mountaintop? Were you really that, hubristic? I'm just saying, did you really think that you actually achieved everything that you set out to do? No. And it's one thing to say, in Blue Sox, I get the idea that, okay, you got to work twice as hard, be twice as good as the average white guy. Okay, that's one thing. But to give thoroughgoing details and train those guys in the civil rights movement, those kids, they had training. They had to be trained in order to deal with the resistance that they did. They were they went to school for that. They went to school for it on their own. How to act and react while you're engaging in resistance. What to do and what not to do.
Did they show that in Selma?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think they showed that in Selma. They had actual schools. No
training on how to deal with the rigors of this culture. None. And for the most part, we got just siphoned off into the public school system where we were met with who? We were met by who? Do I have to show you, man? Women who held these kind of attitudes and beliefs. Let me make it bigger, man. First of all, they didn't want us in their schools to begin with. Then we get to your schools. Did you really believe that after, going to these schools, that these ladies would, work in our best interest? That these ladies would actually do all they could to ensure that we got the best quality education possible, man? Did they really believe that? I'm just saying. I'm just asking the question. Now, I'm not trying to be ignorant or hateful to my forebears. They deserve a certain amount of respect in virtue of what they did for us. Okay, I get it. But come on, fam.
Gigi, I see a pattern because what we see here is post Title VII, right?
Yeah.
Do I need to say anything else?
Yeah, but my argument would be is to this, right? When I came, and this is what I'm trying to say. So when I came into this space, right, and I started talking from things of soft and hard power, political strategies, military strategies, even now, with the education that many of us have, I was speaking in foreign language. So it was this, when you talk about when you talk about like the problem was that a lot of our, remember with this Cointelpro, right? A lot of our institutions that will be built around passing down this knowledge were broken into, so you would have what the Black Panthers are done in what 1982, 83 by the time COINTELPRO is done with it. That's one. The Nation of Islam will be weakened and fractured, probably during the time of Malcolm X, and especially after the death, of Malcolm X, right? And then also, individual African Americans, again, being married, like I said, being married to their ideologies. And so one of the things I want to bring up, so again, when I talk about the Eisenhower administration, now you fast forward, right, into the Kennedy administration, right? And so during the Kennedy administration, you got the Freedom Riders, right? They're taking buses from state to state, in order to protest against the discrimination in American transportation, right? And these people end up victims of terrorism, right? And now, if you're John F. Kennedy, what happened? You're now embarrassed in Vienna, in a summit in Vienna in front of the Soviets, because it's like what you said, right? You got Black people who aren't equal, who again is slaughtered left and right, and you're trying to sell America and capitalism as a pillar of freedom to the world.
Right, folks were calling them out.
Yeah.
Left and right. Shout out to China. Go ahead.
Exactly. And so now, now America, now you're getting called out left and right. And then even for John F. Kennedy, what did he say before he died when he talked about the material shadow governments, right? And again, shout out to COINTELPRO and the secret army organizations and stuff like that.
Small sidebar. That is exactly why Kennedy was responsible for creating the Green Berets. Just on the FYI for my military folks. Go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? And so you got, so again.
Hold on. Let me stop you right here, man. We got 189 people watching, from what I understand, and we don't even have 150 likes at all. And I'm here with, Queen Miss Sunkiss right now. I'm echoing her sentiments. Like, it doesn't, even if you don't like the video, hit the thumbs down on the video if you don't like it or something. Do something. A like it, is free. If you don't like it, what are you even consuming the content for anyway? So at the end of the day, man, support the channel. That's all I'm asking, man. But anyway, man, carry on, man. I'm going to be quiet, okay? Because, I don't want to, because what I'll do is I'll end up interjecting and making this longer than it has to be, because you got pertinent and vital information to give us. So go ahead. I'm going to be quiet.
Again, like I said, this is designed, like I said, this is designed to be that type of discussion. But again, this is what I'm trying to say. So now, with that experience, again, so you would have BGS say the same thing. We would talk about things from BGS, and I would share points on different chats about looking at things from a global political perspective as opposed to just domestic. So again, So for African Americans, for the most part, whenever you made great strides, it was locked into what was happening in the world. And why did I bring up John F. Kennedy? So you fast forward, and this is what I'm trying to say in terms of African Americans, in a sense, working against their own best interests, right? Because even in the space, right, you have guys who can't understand or comprehend things beyond whatever spectrum or ideology that they belong to, right? So when I first came to the space, I told people, listen, I'm a Republican. Got it, right? I voted for Donald Trump. Got it. But let me tell you why I voted for Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump said he wanted to kick off a trade war with China, right? So I'm looking at it like, wow, okay, here's my chance. Hey, all right, racism is institutional, right? So so now I have somebody who's a populist candidate. I'm telling you as a Republican that he's not a traditional Republican candidate. right? And I'm saying, look, set your feelings aside. You have a trade war with China, right? Why not ask for new infrastructure? Because with new infrastructure, you get new institutions, right? So you get new institutions. And hopefully, if you're on your guard with it, these new institutions aren't built on former slave laws, black code laws, or Jim Crow laws that you now have to uproot and revamp because they are new infrastructure, new institutions. Set that aside. Hey, conservative people, we're in the trade war with China. Guess what? It costs you $75,000 to lock these dudes up, but it only costs you $45,000 to make them mechanical engineers. Isn't that better? We can take that and we can compete with China, because in the absence of having your own state, for us, again, in the absence of having your own state, basically what you end up doing in the African American stance is what I got from Nameless, this term of you're just renegotiating the conditions of your surrender, right? Because again, you don't have your own state, you don't have your own kind of base of operations or supply chain the way that these other groups of people have, right? And so now you're constantly negotiating with the United States in terms of how you could be valuable outside of picking cotton somewhere, right?
I do want to interject here though, because we got a brother in the comment section that says, we have nothing because of the black man, not the white man. Man has a choice. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, what I would say, here's the thing. It goes back to what I said. We live in the world where where a question or a question, answer, or statement could be right or wrong or both, depending at what time and space it's asked or it's presented, right? So again, at the end of the day, what he just said, if those three guys would have worked together, right, you now have a different outcome. So in that stance, again, he's correct, right? And then, but you get Cointelpro, right? You get Cointelpro, you get the FBI, you get the CIA, you get the prison to school pipeline. So at the end of the day, right, you're dealing with the entity that has spent billions of dollars to keep you where you are, right? So
Sandog, what is your MOS? What was your MOS in the Army?
I was an armor officer, cavalry.
Did anybody do any deployment in U.S. history post 1900s without psyops?
No, psyops is always there.
Okay, and does psyops have to shoot a single shot?
No, it doesn't. No.
What means of attack does it utilize in general?
In general, so I'll just break it down. So you have what's traditional forms of contact: observation, direct fire, artillery. PSYOPs comes in non-traditional forms of contact. There are other things that you could attack. There are other things you could use to attack people or destroy nations outside of physical means. And so you could attack their culture, you could attack their banking system, media, a number of things.
So help me understand, Sandog. When I see look, I don't want to insult the individual.
Yeah.
When I see perhaps misinformed statements, such as what's being posted up here now,
yes,
would you not agree or disagree that while choice exists, systems oftentimes make the choices that individuals are aware of moot, especially if they still play into the objective of a military campaign, be it physical or non-physical?
Correct. So like I'm looking at what Stay Fresh is saying here, right? And remember, Nameless, you and I had these back conversations, right? I want you to leave this up. It says, because they're not Arabs. The people in Afghanistan are Persians, right? So they're not Arabs. So Afghanistan chose death over dishonor, and now they have their society back. So let me break that down, because I lived in that country for a number of years. so again, for a lot of people, and this is what we talked about, Nameless, in the back chat, in terms of war, the way these systems work, and it doesn't simply work out of desire. So the Afghans that you're talking about were funded, trained, and supported by the U.S. government in the 70s, right? What in the 70s? So there's a film about it called Charlie Wilson's War, right? And so they were used as proxies by the U.S. government to prevent the Russians from taking over Pakistan, because Pakistan will give the Russians access to the Indian Ocean, right? So the Afghans themselves there were used as proxies, against the Russians, and so they end up fighting that war, and then after that war between the Afghans themselves comes a civil war that was mainly fought in Kabul and a couple of other fronts in terms of who's going to actually control that country, right? So Afghanistan, and I'm trying my best to, because so many things are running through me right now. Afghanistan right now is a complete mess, right? So the people that are in power there's no money in the country. If I had 1,000 Afghani in my pocket right now and I took it to the bank, I would get nothing for it. Absolutely nothing for it. I have friends right now who text me, who ask me to send them money because they're going hungry. There are no jobs. Nothing is happening right now, and nothing is happening right now in that economy. So when you look at the Afghans and these guys, man, they did not, quote and unquote, defeat the U.S. military. We left because we have another war that we have to fight. So
this is the funny thing. This is what kind of kills me about all of this, right?
Yeah.
So we already know that the black condition related to slavery is entirely different than the condition of what the people of Afghanistan have gone through over millennia.
Yes.
Because like the Afghanis have been in the middle of conflict for damn near millennia, bruh. And being used as a proxy to fight other people's wars.
Correct.
For hundreds of years.
Correct.
Okay? Hundreds. Not just recently, hundreds of years, bro. Compare and contrast that with former slaves who couldn't read or write, couldn't have a weapon, couldn't even congregate together to develop a fucking plan. And we talking about death and dishonor. And the only other thing that fucks me up about this, right? What shot have you motherfuckers fired? That's what kills me about all this shit. All the nationalist talk about dishonor and death and shit. I ain't seen none of them niggas take no shots at all, bruh. I ain't seen not one nigga take a shot. And when the nigga does take a shot, guess how he gets characterized?
Right.
He's a crazy motherfucker. He's crazy. This nigga crazy. This nigga fucked up. This nigga need to pump the brakes. He needs to stop. That's too radical. That's the first thing you hear from the same nationalist motherfucker. I didn't even heard the Nation of Islam recently come out. And all these old so-called radical, even Dame Dash, I don't know. And even 50 Cent, I don't know what Kanye is doing or what he's talking about or what. He just doesn't know how to handle the success and all this shit. First thing the black men do is they start backpedaling and fucking beat feeding and shit. I don't care which ones it is. I don't care if it's from the thug, criminal class, or the middle class, whatever class. The first thing Negroes do is start backpedaling and shit.
Yeah. But
but I gotta say this, bruh. I have to. What shots y'all niggas, nationalist niggas firing? Cause y'all ain't dead. I don't see no black male bodies on the street cause they part of something like the Black Panthers now. I don't see that shit. I don't see nobody getting hosed down or nothing, for real, in a collective way. Maybe you had some rioting, some uprising, if you want to characterize it as that, recently. but that shit dies down. That's a temporary conflagration. Okay? We talking about sustained ideological political action. Which group is out here doing that shit, bro? In the United States on its own. And the Afghanis, like you said, man, them motherfuckers was trained by the goddamn CIA and shit like that, bro. Al-Qaeda was trained by the CIA, bro. Now, I don't know what you know, but imagine America coming to you like, look, we're going to give you these guns, we're going to give you these weapons, we're going to give you a reason to fight. You fight for us, we're going to make sure you're paid, and then, eventually we're going to give you autonomy. That's the kind of shit they give you. They tell you. It's always the promise of autonomy. You think these people are going to try to give you autonomy, bruh? You think that the United States empire is working towards ensuring that people elsewhere in the world maintain autonomy? The question is, not if we the walking dead, but if we are walking zombies, how do we get out of the situation? By being realistic.
Yeah, but that's what I was trying to explain to them. The people in Afghanistan are in a far worse condition than people are in the States. That's a completely separate conversation. So just like what he said, right? The Walking Dead, right? So when America leaves Afghanistan, you see Afghans who are so desperate to leave the country that they grab the wings of airplanes, thinking that if they hold on, they could somehow last 40,000 feet in the air for damn near 3 hours for the plane to land in Dubai or whatever and get them out of that situation successfully. Right?
Fam, you've got people hiding in the damn landing gear.
Fam, so that's what I'm saying. Exactly. So the thing is that I know for African Americans that there's a frustration. There's a frustration because I'm trying to, and I know it sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to carefully manage my words to explain, like I said, to explain the difference. And yes, we've suffered great injustices in America, but the truth is, and I've been around, the truth is I have yet to open up a 20-foot container on any port and see a bunch of African Americans in it running away for the sake of freedom.
Get shit out. This motherfucker say he ain't even black, bro.
Okay, yeah. So,
but he's staying fresh and shit and got a pair of motherfucking Jordans and shit on his icon. Like, man, what the fuck are you doing here, bro?
You know what
the fuck you even here for?
You know what he's doing, and I'm gonna put it in the chat right here. And so you know, this is a legit profession you guys can sign up for. Here's it is on the Army website, psychological operations specialist. Shout out to that goofiness. My point is this, man. Everybody wants to
fuck that dude, man. Fuck you, man. Fuck you and your mama and your daddy. How about that? How you like that shit?
But the thing is,
fuck you and your mama and your daddy, bitch. Fuck you.
There are guys, right? Again, but there are people, like I said, there are people that, like I said, within our group that thinks this way. And so, again, when you're talking about engaging in warfare, man, there's a whole logistical process and all that. Like, again, like what I said. So for the Afghans, right, they have the U.S. government or whatever partners financing it is what they're doing, right? You can't just up and just go fight people, man. You need, so for example, let's go into Reconstruction, right? When they disarm black people, right? So now you're fresh out of slavery, right? You can't vote, right? You can't vote. They're taking away your mobilization and everything else. So the North just beat the South. Why? Because the North had an industrial base. The South didn't, right? The North can manufacture guns and cannons and uniforms and all of that stuff, where the South themselves, they were just mainly farmers. So there was nothing they could do. So logistically, if you're just coming off a plantation and you have people who are trying to keep you on that plantation, or for the most part, you're being kept on that plantation, right? Because remember, the majority of black people are still living in the South, more than likely sharecropping or something like that, even prior to the Great, or even through the Great Migration, right? So we're not gonna start to really dominate like cities and population or whatever until later in the 21st century, aside from the early 1900s. And so, like I said, there's a whole mechanism or supply chain that goes into, and remove this guy. I'm not even thinking about him, because there are many people that feel this way. And what I'm saying is that mobilization and going off to handle business and everything else, man, you don't even have the infrastructure to do it. Right? And whatever the Afghans have, whatever Boko Haram has, or whatever, those guys are getting funded by somebody, somewhere, somehow, to do the things that they do.
You're not gonna have people who are. You're not gonna have people economically destitute and then somehow just build a tank in their backyard. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And then not only that, let's keep it a buck here, man. The communists funded some of the civil rights protestation that you saw during the civil rights movement. While you bullshitting, like if you study critical race theory, you'll understand that one of the principal ways that the civil rights movement was able to actually get off in the way that it did was that America was basically claiming, you need to follow our economic and social model throughout the world. We need to be the big kahunas, okay? But at the same time, while they're saying this, that they're, the champions of freedom and liberty and property and all this shit, they were denying the very self-same thing, the ideals that they so-called live and die for, talking about dying and living for and shit like that. They were denying those basic rights and freedoms, so they say, to black folks. The very things that they champion and hold the most dear, they were denying to us.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the world saw this and was like, y'all are some fucking hypocrites. Y'all are some hypocrites. And I can honestly say, and we all know it, white people talk out the side of their fucking necks, man. They got forked tongues and shit. It is what it is. Give me liberty or give me death, but you got a slave-based society. Your entire economy is predicated on slave labor, but you the land of the free and the home of the brave. That don't sound like the land of the free and the home of the brave to me. It might be for you and your kin and your kith, but it ain't for mine. So, it's like this. If it's fuck me, it's fuck you. You take that to the bank. Stay fresh. Take that and go motherfucking get some Jordans with that shit. I'm out, man. I'm done for a second. This shit, it gets my goat, man. Like, I don't, you got people out here playing these side ops games and shit. These, like Nameless said, agents, man. They don't have any solutions, or they want to prevent a solution by kicking up a whole bunch of bullshit to prevent you from being able to think clearly. But I'm thinking clearly, man. Like, I'm not stupid. I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. I'm some dumb, but I ain't plumb dumb.
Yeah. But that's the thing about, again, right? So this is what I'm talking about. Or again, like I said, what was same thing, like looking at, so for a lot of us, man, again, understanding this stuff from a geopolitical perspective. So in recent times, especially, a lot of our major strides have come from geopolitics, which is in a sense why when you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, hate it or love it, right? You had people in Germany or people all around the world, again, saying, again, Black Lives Matter, right? Black Lives Matter, because globally, right, African Americans or black people in general will be the face of anti-imperialism, right? So again, Nameless and I had this conversation before then. So this is kind of one of the reasons why people thought that things would be very different or radically different under Barack Obama, right? Because the expectations is that from a black man that things would operate different, that you wouldn't have business as usual. And so the same time all of this is happening, right? Again, look at it and look at America's fear, especially now when you get Dr. King and other civil rights leaders who are starting to what's the word I'm looking for? They are speaking out against the war in Vietnam, right? And so again, so now if you're J. Edgar Hoover and those guys that are operating at that particular time, right? Now that's the green light, right? That's the green light. Hey, like you said, I have complete autonomy. These dudes are, like I said, these dudes are communists. These dudes are communists because what's happening across the water with a lot of people who are now getting their freedom, especially in Africa, right? Shout out to Patrice Lumumba, Steve Biko, and others, right? These guys now want to do what? They now desire socialist systems. Why do they desire socialist systems? Because they've been abused by capitalism. Right? So again, they've been abused by capitalism, just like what you just said. Matter of fact, we are more than abused by capitalism, fam. You and I are products of capitalism. So it's even beyond it. That's chattel slavery, right? So again, shout out to Thomas Jefferson, right? So it's now illegal. It's now illegal to get slaves from Africa, right? There's severe penalties for that. And so, hey, we can just breed them here, right? We can just breed them and we can make them here. And, and we can have our own internal, again, you got your little slave sex pens or whatever in Maryland or Virginia and all that stuff. And, you give birth to them there, you manufacture them there per se. And then you just, trade them and push them out across the country, right? And go out there and make your money. So,
and we need to be clear on something also, because at this point in time, when we're getting into the beginnings of the Vietnam era, which again, there's this whole communist undertone fueling the whole thing. I'm not going to get into the minutia of how a lot of this was BS, but the point of the matter is there were two primary objectives here. Number one, anybody that was speaking out against the war was a target for the FBI. And all you needed to do, specifically, you were a target of Cointelpro. And all you had to do was make any sentiment that wasn't pro-war and say anything in any official capacity or context, and you were targeted. But if you were African American, not only did you have a green light on your back, if you spoke out against the war, it was a problem. If you had any affiliation, whether it be through church or any formal organization with civil rights, you had a file on you. If you were even going to college, you had a file on you. And I want this to be really understood, because part of the condition to be recruited into that organization a lot of times was that you needed to know 5 people who were African American oftentimes to be included in some of these operations. And it was a green light for you to be added. It is extremely important to understand how deep the infiltration got. Even if you provided a little bit of information, just so you understand, the formation of intelligence is all about spreading out people from all over the place. And any of you that have been in the military know this term OPSEC, operational security. If you've been overseas like we have and had to deal with this mess, you had this drilled into your head over and over and over again. OPSEC. You take those little bits of information and they all get centralized for analysis. And it's through the process of that information analysis that you get intelligence. These are done by controlled officers whose job is to amalgamate that in context with an agenda. And the agenda was to prevent anti-war protesters and any civil rights action, which again was made synonymous with communist activity. So if you ever wonder why, when you begin investigating the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and you hear this recurring concept and discussion about communism, this is a big reason as to why this was a centralized thing. It was seen as a pushback against the nonsense that was going on. And it's intellectually lazy and dishonest to have it being framed in modern day politics with regards to that, like Gigi was saying earlier, because people do not take the context under which these events were taking place. Again, I will say it, we were at war, and I still make the argument that we're prisoners of war. But go ahead, fam.
Yeah. And so again, and you know, back to what Nameless point is again.
Hold on,
so
let me give a shout. I want to give a shout out to BGS and Dr.
Okay.
Johnson, man. That's what I want to do. And shout out to
Okay.
Ab Media and some other brothers out there, man. Shout out to y'all, man.
Yeah, man.
Go
Shout
ahead,
out
go
to
ahead.
Yeah, but again, and so this, like I said, so this is something that you have to understand. So you have geopolitics that's in play. You have the military industrial complex that's in place. So again, you're looking at you know things that are being employed within Cointelpro. So now you have power of the National Guard, law enforcement agencies. So when the Black Panthers in their push right again to push Second Amendment rights for Black people. You have the right to protect yourself, the right to bear arms. And so when the Black Panthers end up in a confrontation with the police, right, and somewhat get a dose of their own medicine, this is where you now get the birth of SWAT teams, right? You know, for, you know, again, for police, this is how they started to put it together. So you're looking at, and so what I'm trying to hammer in with all of this for anybody that's out there, you know, and you know, the guy that came up when he's a troll, what you need to understand is that when you look at Afghans or any other group of people, these are people that had their own country. There's a whole level of control when you live on that terrain and when you're from that terrain. Hence why that's one of the main reasons why the Native Americans didn't end up in the position that we were in, right? Because the Native Americans, if you tried to enslave them, how? Right? How on terrain or land that they know like the back of their hand, right? So it will be, again, it will be virtually impossible. And maybe Nameless one day, you know, for all our buddies out there that are super alpha, right? Again, I understand the uses of it, but one day I would like to do something with Nameless or whatever, and I want to explain to you how the whole supply chain or the whole process of war or revolution, even if it's conventional, asymmetrical, which is kind of like the new word for guerrilla warfare. And I can explain to you how it all works and how you can't just, how if you're in the situation that African Americans have been, that you can't just, it's not something that you can just pick up and do, especially one, without a manufacturing base, and then two, if you're divided culturally, and other things the way that we've been divided. So there's a whole type of science that goes into it, and I promise.
And I'll reinforce that by simply saying, and we can definitely do that over at the dojo, because even the concept of the hidden village took that into consideration. Because even back in the 15th, 1600s, you have people using these asymmetrical guerrilla warfare models to survive a situation where Japan was being fully imperialized. I mean, this is human nature we're dealing with at the end of the day. And if you're not used to seeing culture being built into institutions, and you don't understand what war looks like from a logistical level, you can't put these things together. You just simply don't know. And so it's why I try to take this with a grain of salt. But people need to understand war isn't like how you see it in the movies. And even if maybe you got SRP'd and sent out overseas for deployment, for anybody that's actually put in work like that, you know there's a bigger issue with regards to campaign funding and logistics. And when you engage in asymmetric warfare, you're not just out there, you know, with your heart on your sleeve, talking about some "we will not surrender" on some Braveheart mess.
So like
let me say this, man. So you know, like I always see this guy, and I know BGS wanted to speak to him and said no trolling, but let me just say this, right? Communism already benefited you, bro, in the form of the civil rights movement. It already benefited you, but because you got your head stuck so far off the white Republicans' asses, you can't even see it. You don't even care to study the history. All you dealing with is today and what benefits you right here, right now, today, or some ideology you've adopted that seems to make some kind of sense to you. But the reality is you wouldn't even be drinking at a goddamn Walmart water fountain or being able to go to a fucking hotel if it wasn't for interest convergence and the communist movement having an impact on how American politicians move in order to try to perform public relations. Because that's what the civil rights movement all really was about anyway. America trying to save face. So if it wasn't for these groups of black people who you might not be a slave, but if you are a descendant of slaves, you ain't but 3 to 4 generations removed from the shit. Those are the facts. Because slavery ended in what, 1865?
Yes.
On paper, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so at the end of the day, if you didn't have this threat looming, your ass wouldn't even be in a position to enjoy the benefits that you so-called get today, if you deem them as benefits. And, you know, the other funny thing about this shit to me is, man, you got guys, man, who act as if, and I want to keep it on topic as well, but it fucks me up, because this is the deepest point, I think, out of all the conversations that we have, whether they be between feminists, black folks, white folks, Jewish folks, it all comes down to material resources and who has them and who doesn't have them. That's what all this shit boils down to. Who has influence over collective decision making and who doesn't. That's what all of this boils down to. And at the end of the day, man, how much money does the average black person have, man, in terms of wealth? Motherfuckers out here acting like they got Kanye money, man. Straight up. Negroes acting like they got Kanye money out here, man. Like they got billions of dollars to play with. Most of you niggas, man, are 2 paychecks away from being destitute, man. From the fucking house of cards falling down. Those are the facts. If you lose your job for 6 months, what the fuck you gonna do? Those are the facts, man. That's the condition. Even white America's in this condition. So I'll be damned if some black dude gonna tell me that he papered up to the point where he ain't gotta have shit for 6 or 7 months. He can keep everything afloat. It's a lie. It ain't the truth at all. So the reality is, man, in America, you got a group of black folks right now, man. I get it. I understand. Nobody wants to be wedded to an ideology. I get it. But if you understand history, you understand that certain things occurred in a timeline and were appropriate for that time, strategically. You take a group of slaves who have been exploited from their own labor. And in the 30s, you got the Great Depression. You got a group of people who are uber wealthy and they don't want to share the resources of the country or their businesses or the wealth they've accumulated. And you got people at soup kitchens and shit. Why would communism not appeal to these people, man? Why would it not appeal to them? Why would like somebody a generation removed from slavery not have an affinity for an economic ideology that says that resources need to be spread more equitably? And you got run-of-the-mill average Negroes who argue against redistribution of wealth. Under what terms and grounds? That they want to protect what little shit they got? You ain't even got shit. You don't even have shit. Your money, you ain't got no money. That's the point. You ain't got paper. You not papered up. That's the point. You are not papered up, bruh.
Every small hat's laughing at that statement he just made, by the way. But I digress. Go ahead, family.
Like, I mean, I understand you want what you want for you, but at the end of the day, if you ain't got shit, what is it worth anyway? I can give you a breakdown on the distribution of wealth in the United States. I can give it to you right now. And you got niggas basically saying that they don't want nobody to take their shit and they ain't got shit. All you got to do is look at the breakdown and you'll see it. You don't have shit to take. You don't have shit to take, man. That's the problem. Motherfuckers like, I don't want somebody to take my shit. You ain't got shit. That's the point. You don't have shit. But keep on with the discussion, man. Keep going. Man.
But again, a lot of these policies, so to go back into it, so one of the things you have to remember is that many of these policies during the Jim Crow era also hurt poor white people as well, right? But what would be unfortunate is that off of the sake of skin color, this is an injustice done to them that they wouldn't be able to see. So this is kind of what you're just mentioning right now, like the fact that many of us, or you will have those of us who talk as if we're millionaires in waiting, right? And so this is a part of the allure of whiteness in America also, right? It's that, again, that you're just a millionaire in waiting, and which is why many people, especially from my side of the house, would parrot these comments or these types of ideas. The thing is that addressing what happened with African Americans, if you want to look at it from a particular class, from a solely class perspective, if you properly address what's happened with African Americans, you will kind of fundamentally change everything that America is in terms of the way its economic model, operates. So one of the reasons why you don't have brand new infrastructure today, or why you're dealing with the consequences of NAFTA, is because, again, that model of free or cheap labor has never left the United States, right? So the reason why you haven't seen wage increases in decades is because that plantation model, that lock you in the factory and work you to death model, has never left the United States. So the idea is that we have to find people who in modern day terms could fit into that model. And so when you get people who complain about immigration, or the immigrants are taking our jobs, they're going to come here and work for less. Well, if you turn back the hands of time just 80 years, they're saying the exact same thing about you, which is why labor unions were formed. Right? So we have to be, in terms of the reason, and like I said, and this is the reason why the history of African Americans in general, or why you would have the kind of pushback that you would have on critical race theory, is because if you were to study the history of African Americans in the United States, again, these are the types of observations or revelations that will come to the top. Is that, again, if you're white, in a sense, right, you've never really escaped feudal England, right? And so the slave class, or these entities that you call black people, Negroes, or whatever, is nothing more than a smokescreen of the fact that you are a serf or a vassal over there, and you're nothing more than a serf or vassal over here.
Okay, fam, look at this chart right here, man. This is a chart that gives you some understanding about what kind of wealth inequality exists in the United States. And you already know black people are at the bottom of this shit, right? Yeah. You already know. So the top 1% have wealth going over damn near, 34 trillion. Their household wealth, the top 1%, it equates to 34 trillion, okay? 90 through 99%, 50 trillion. Okay, the top, right, 90 through 99%. 50 through 90%. 112, what they say, the collective wealth is 112 children. trillion, right? The bottom 50%, where is that shit at? Where is it at, bruh? And then you got a group of Negroes who will say, well, mine is mine. What's mine is mine. You ain't got shit. You don't have anything to take. It's all concentrated at the top. Now, you don't see this kind of wealth distribution in other countries. You don't see it like that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in any other countries, but you damn sure don't see anything as slanted as this. And then you'll get a group of Negroes who will say, well, can't nobody take my money. You ain't got no money. You don't have anything.
But you're
the dumb part is let me just say this part real quick because it's perfect timing for it. This is exactly what we see being introduced with the Southern strategy, which is all of those points that are being parroted. That's where they got that from. It's in this time period, almost damn near perfectly in response to the civil rights movement, the Southern strategy is put front and center. And this is the same talking points that were presented there. And we spent all of this time for these past couple presentations trying to show you the origins of this language. And we'll still have people rappelling from the ceiling, screaming daughters of the Confederacy talking points and fear of Negro rule in the form of bootstrap theory. Sandog, you got it.
Yeah. So, what I want to talk about, so going into the next time, and we'll work it behind the scenes when we get back, Nameless, now that you're going back to work. And so, once you're out of Cointelpro, right? So now you're talking about, the Black Panthers, how it devolves into the gangs that we have today. Then you get into the drug trade, the school to prison system, 94 crime bill, eminent domain, eminent domain, and a couple of other topics that I want to cover, especially now that we're in the modern era. And then that will be the bit of it, like to kind of close it, like I said, to kind of close it all off.
Put a bow. Let me say this too, then.
Before you make your point,
yeah,
I want to emphasize how everything that's been in play has always been about rolling back the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And then the idea of that your ancestors have never did anything for you. They may have their dysfunctions, as every generation has their dysfunctions. But again, what you have to, and I get it, that many of these people are students, right? But they're students, and teaching your kids this stuff and everything else. But I guarantee you, they're not masters of succession planning. And so this is what I'm saying. Like you're trying to build these movements, right? You're trying to build these movements, but at the same time, your own government is working against you, Gigi. So think about the show that you had just last week, right? Where you're talking about single-sex education for Black boys. All the data that's there says that this solution could produce the best possible outcome, right? And what do you have against it? You have opposition, right? Barack Obama, my brother's keeper, opposition. What was it? 100 Black men in Detroit. We're going to take our streets back. Again, opposition. You get to what I was going to say for one of our next conversations. You get to the Million Man March. What do you get with it? You get opposition. So whenever there's some form of mobilization that Black men want to take in order to take their 2 steps forward, there's been a lot of things, whether it's government, private, or somewhere in between, that facilitates the 3 steps back, right? And so it's when you talk about like things like succession planning and institution building and all of that, and and I promise you, one day we'll get together and we can have a complete conversation on it. And what I just have to craft it all in a way and talk about it all in a way that somehow none of us end up in jail, right? So if you could just give me like a month or two, a month or two to put it together, you know what I'm saying? You know, we could come back and talk to it, because a lot of this stuff, you know, a lot of the stuff that we sit down and we wonder why about, this is not, and what we wonder why about is not that simple. So Black Panthers and Nation of Islam didn't have a unity of effort or a unity of, like I said, or a unity of command. And you're competing with something that is more organized and better funded and better funded than you are, right? So if J. Edgar Hoover drops dead, right, they could just plug and play, right? Hey, we got this movement, Green Gorilla goes to jail, we're like, what's next, right? Or we're fighting each other, or we're fighting each other over leadership. And then based upon who's the leader will depend on the support and funding that you get, right? So if you wanted to use the Congo as an example, right? Hey, Patrice Lumumba had his supporters, but guess what? but guess what? His opposition, or the people, or the other tribal people that didn't want him there, right? Who I bet you they had no problem securing funding or support from the outside. So, like I said, so you know, these systems are very they're very complex, and combating these systems are not as easy as you think. And then Nameless and GG, maybe after the civil rights stuff, and I'll shut up, one of the things I want to cover is philosophically and legally, to talk about what is a citizen, right? So when you talk about, so defense of a nation is also a civic duty, right? So what's a citizen? So if you're denied citizenship, you're at a major disadvantage of what you can do and cannot do within a society, along with talking about mobilization. And so maybe one of the things that could help people understand this a lot better is that I'll sit down with you guys and maybe we could do a direct comparison. I'll draw out like all the graphics that what we would do in the military and everything else, and I'll draw it out and I'll show you. And let's talk about, okay, this is what Toussaint Louverture did, and this is what Nat Turner did. This is what the Maroons did, right? And this is what this is what was done with the Geechees in the Carolinas. And then again, you could sit there and you could talk about the supply chain of it. You could talk about the supply chain of it and the actions taken. And for many people. And for many people, I'm not even going to tell you what the conflict is. There'll just be some terrain and everything else, and then you tell me what you would do if it's all that simple, right? And so,
man, these guys, man, look.
Yeah.
All I can say is, man, I'm just tired of hearing these armchair revolutionary motherfuckers talk about how all it takes is just some courage or something. You know, like, I mean, look. Going back to like the ancient virtues of Aristotle, right? So to virtues to Aristotle, just using ancient philosophy of virtue ethics, right, is a midpoint between two extremes. Okay, you could be, courage is a virtue, it is, okay, but you can overshoot virtue, or you can undershoot it. Okay, too much courage is called rashness. No courage at all is called cowardice. But it's one thing to be courageous, and it's another thing to be rash. Okay, being rash would be jumping out with a gun, just starting, you know, like on the battlefield, and it's 100 guns trained on you. You've seen those movies where you got the fucking idiot who decides that he's gonna fucking charge the enemy, and then he just gets riddled with bullets and shit. It's stupid. And a lot of these guys are like, well, you know, we need to exercise some courage. No, what you want us to do is to be rash.
Yeah.
And to what end or aim? It's absolutely ridiculous. You don't fight a battle that you don't have any chance of winning. That goes against just war theory. I don't even, have any of you ever heard of that? Just war theory? You don't get into a skirmish that you know you can't win. Because you're going to decimate your own population and you're going to lose foolishly. You just don't do it. Okay? Not to say you don't offer up any resistance, but our thought of war is what? We haven't even learned it. No. Unless we went to the military, we don't have any concept of protracted struggle at all. We don't have it. That's one of the problems we have. We have no concept of protracted and prolonged struggle. Even though we've been doing it all along and can't even identify what it is. And that's sad. That's like we have developed intuitively a means by which to resist, but we haven't refined it. We're just doing everything improvisationally. And not to say that, there's something wrong with improvisation, but at some point, it's like, come on, man, like what are we doing out here? The average black person is just moving throughout the world, man, like ad hoc. But the U.S. government ain't the U.S. government ain't ad hoc, man. It's just not. Those people got, like you said, they have resources and they have a strategy. They have books, like all you got to do is look up right now, counterinsurgency strategies. And they got manuals that the government has publicized to demonstrate these are the tactics that we use. It's on the internet.
You can get it on Kindle. You could get it on Kindle. I'm being dead ass serious with you. And what's sad is a lot of us that are in the military work with them. Go ahead, family.
They'll tell you this is what we do. Like if we're in a battle with a country, here are the psychological operations and counterintelligence strategies that we utilize. And they'll tell you specifically what campaigns they use them on. That's crazy. And then we sit back and we like, oh, well, what should we do? First of all, you need to study the art of war. But we do it insofar as 50 Cent type shit. We reread the 50 Laws of Power, some shit like that, and think we got like a strategy of life, and we all move through it individually, trying to gain shit for ourselves. Like, at the end of the day, it's all about consumer capitalism. You won the game when you can go to Walmart and spend $5,000 or some shit like that. Or you can go to the mall. You won today if you can go buy a foreign car or lease one. Because most of the cats that's talking about they got foreigns and all this shit, they leasing them. They don't own them. And then that's something with depreciating value anyway. So I just say, black folks, man, we have no politics at all, really. We have no strategy at all, really. We've looked at various persons throughout history to try to explain to you, no, it's not the fact that we've just been cowards doing nothing. We've made various attempts to do a whole bunch of different shit. You got David and Goliath situation here, man. And you acting like we supposed to have this motherfucker all one lickety split. Like we supposed to be coming out in the first quarter and win the whole fucking game right then and there. All we need is just some courage and shit. Don't need no resources. Don't need ideology. Don't need unification. All we need to do is adopt the talking points of the contemporary political parties. We'll figure it all out just that way. What the fuck are y'all thinking, man? Like, I just don't understand black dudes, man. I do, but it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to understand where black people's minds are, man, especially black men.
It's Disney warfare. That's all it is.
Yeah, but again, shout out to Dr. Tia Son Johnson and the 14-point plan. Again, right, because the thing is that you have to move beyond being a political football, right? You're going to, you're going to have to at some point draw a line in the sand, right, and say, me first, and that's something that we have to do. And so at the end of the day, when you look at Dr. Theophon Johnson's plan, which is the foundation or the infrastructure of what I believe that will be our main agenda going into the future, regardless of whatever side of the aisle that you have, right? Because at the end of the day, right, there are conservative philosophies and there are liberal philosophies. So you get whatever you can, either whatever side that's going to support it. But again, there's, um, it's just that I get where some of these guys come from because again, you have to remember, just like what BGS said, right? Again, or what we talked about earlier, we don't educate our own kids, and so what in warfare or in game theory, you reach what's called a decision point, or even more so a decision point when you make a decision that's decisive to the final outcome of that battle. And so again, so unfortunately, what happened with us was that that decision or that final outcome in terms of okay, where black kids are going to be educated, what exactly it is that they're going to learn. That's just something. That was just something. I don't know I can't say it wasn't thought of or whatever the case might be. During those times we were in very desperate situations. I don't think that people know how poor we were, and the reason why I know how poor we were is because again, my family originates out of Alabama. So I have been, unless you're from the deep South or a certain part of America, you're not going to see, you're not going to see the level of poverty that black people were living in Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas. I'm not saying that it's not, I'm not saying that other people didn't suffer, man, but when I look at the homes that my parents grew up in, fam, I have a picture of my father when he was born, and his first crib, I swear to God, was a damn hollowed out egg carton stuffed with like Easter bunny grass or whatever it was in it, and a pillow. Right? We, you had maybe even BGS himself was birthed by a midwife in the house somewhere, man. I don't think, like I said, I don't think that people really have a grasp on what our circumstances were. Like I said, during that particular time, and Gigi, if you turn back the hands of time, remember when you would have been a teenager when I was a small boy, right? And when you go back into the '80s with Schoolhouse Rock, what was the big thing in the '80s, right? Finish high school, get a high school diploma. That was the big thing in the '70s and the '80s, right? Get a high school diploma because again, chances are either your parents directly or your grandparents didn't even have a high school education. And so what we have to remember, one of the things that we have to remember is the long way that we've come in the short amount of time that we've been given. So I know that
Sandog, I'm the first male on my dad's side of the family to graduate high school.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So it's we were it wasn't, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't looking too good. The decisions that I can make right now my father couldn't fathom in terms of what my knowledge base is. My father can't fathom the decisions that I can make at 45 that he can make at 45. Not even remotely close.
One of the things, let me interject here, man. Look, things have been getting a little bit better for us, just a little bit, but incrementally. Yes. Okay. Now, we already know that black men are on a downwardly mobile track, though. Everybody else is capitalizing off what happened during the civil rights movement, except for us. We're on a downward track. Okay. And, it's funny that you got a demographic who's on a downward track that say that, they want more fiscally conservative policies, I mean, I'm not saying that these guys don't have anything to hold on to, but I mean, if you want to have a progressive tax policy, I don't see that really impacting most black people anyway. Like, unless you're in the top 10 to, the top 2 to 3%. I don't see how that will impact you. I just don't get it. But, the far right, and these, classical economists will make you think that, okay, well, having, a tax policy that's more, fair would somehow hurt them. Like that, their ability to do this shit is masterful, bruh. Like, I just don't get it, man. I just don't understand it. But this is the shit that we're dealing with. I can show you another chart. I don't know how much help it will actually be, but at the end of the day, it has moved. What we need is a statement, man, about what we want. Me and Dr. Johnson are going to do this, man, because like a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, when I first started to try and develop, the documentary, what I wanted to do was to draw up a statement. Like black feminists have the Combahee River Collective statement. Yeah. Like they have definitive statements about what they believe and what they're aiming for, like where their activity and their energy is going to be directed. We don't have it. We're scatterbrained. We're all over the place. And what we need to do is collectively, like Dr. Johnson has already been doing, he's already been drawing up, like, these are things that black men in this space want to see materialize politically. Now we need a philosophical statement that wraps it all up. So like a preamble. I've been working on it. I want you all to help me in developing it. Is that something y'all can agree with? I mean, to at least work on it, because I'll come up with the initial formulation of it, but it needs to be amended so that everybody can agree with it. And then we can tag it on front of Dr. Johnson's 15-point plan, and after which we can continue to roll. We can continue to push. But they have a trajectory. They have a political ideology with which to attach themselves. We have something tentative, but it's all based around dating and mating and shit like that, which I understand. But for crying out loud, man, this dating and mating shit ain't gonna get us nowhere. I mean, maybe you disagree. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. BGS Ibmore has the document. Okay. But it's mainly negative at the current moment because I did it like at a time when I was pissed off. I was like, this is my problem with black feminists. This is my problem with black women. This is my problem with X, Y, or Z. This is my problem with BLM. So now it has to evolve into something positive. What do we positively affirm so other people can stop attaching ideals to us? Some of the things we have to talk about are, what is our belief system as it pertains to incel radicalization? Like, because they're basically saying that this is what we believe in. We're a bunch of incels who can't get pussy, and we are demanding that women give us access to sex or some shit like that. We need to come out definitively and say, this is what we're on. This is what we want. Here's our main bones or points of contention. This is what we desire to see in the world for us. Now, if you disagree with it, fine. I mean, but this is what we want. Yeah. And we can then, first you have to identify, if you've taken game theory, if you've taken logic, any major, even economics, you can't even begin to accomplish anything without first setting a goal and a set of principles upon action by which you'll move or direct your activity. It's called irrationality. It's what it's called. You are a logician. Are you not? In war. Imagine you don't even know what the fuck you're gonna do, but you enter the battlefield. Imagine playing football and you don't even know what your plays are. This is what we're doing. So, like, Dr. Johnson and I are going to have a show, and I'm going to do it on his channel. And I'm going to give you what my idea of the preamble, what it should be. And then you add to it. And then, it'll be an ongoing document. It'll be on just like his 15-point plan. It could be a 99-point plan. But we need to develop a ideological framework by which we operate. Everybody does it, man. Like, don't the ninjas do it?
The Art of War states
do it?
The Art of War states that you win first and then go forth in the battle, and only fools go out in the battle and then try to win.
You got to have a plan. I'll put it down in nigga terms. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
There it is.
The 6 P's, man. Remember that shit. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Look, even the Panthers had a... Go ahead.
I was about to say, the last thing I was going to say is, the unique thing about the human species that separates us from all the others is we have a form of collective learning that we can pass down from generation to generation. That's so expert and meticulous that other animals can only just basically operate on instinct over a slow amount of time and change. We can change rapidly and direct our activity in a way that other animals cannot, man. That's just the facts about who we are. But we got to live up to who we are and stop being directed every which way by these folks, man, because they don't have our best interest in mind. If they had our best interest in mind, the Justice Department would be still protecting us. Instead of you having a fucking J. Edgar Hoover pop up and doing everything he can to suppress us.
Let me jump in on that, GG. Because even the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense had a damn agenda. And a lot of people don't know that. There's a link to the 10-point plan. I'm not even going to say it out loud. You guys read it and save it if you don't already know about it. But a lot of the things they were talking about then, we're still talking about to this day. Some of those programs were even adopted by the government later on for state programs, et cetera, et cetera. But what I really want to highlight here is that even with what J. Edgar Hoover was doing, because what a lot of people don't understand is at this time period, J. Edgar Hoover was seen as like a celebrity in the federal government. He could do no wrong. It took activists breaking in to their location where they stored all of those files, breaking in illegally and stealing the documents with Cointelpro in order for it to go live. And even with that, they had to leak those documents to multiple newspaper agencies. And it was only by chance they finally decided to break the article down and Cointelpro was out the bag. A year later, he dies. There's a book that talks about this called The Burglary, the Discovery of J. Edgar Hoover's Secret FBI, Cointelpro. We almost never even knew about this crap. Like, we knew of it, but we wouldn't even been able to prove it. Now a lot of those files are up there for you to see during the Freedom of Information Act. And the really ridiculous part in all of this is that, yes, there was some corrective legislation that went down. And just so you know, people had entire files that were made on them where if there was an emergency in the United States and shit was about to hit the fan, they had a short list of people to immediately disappear and unalive if something went down. And the majority of those folks on that list were Black people. That list was found out and leaked to government officials. They told him to stop it. And he said, okay, I'll stop it, and kept doing it anyway. Just know that when the new director that showed up after J. Edgar Hoover died, and I think it was 72, when the new director showed up, they were going to greenlight all of this mess. They continued it. They just called it something else. And a lot of these programs kept going under different names, but didn't really get to see the light of day again until the Patriot Act shows up. And it's 2 words I really want to highlight here so you can understand what's at stake with regards to the Patriot Act. And the terms are Black radical extremists, Black identified radical extremists, and the new addition to the catalog and lexicon, incels. So I want you to peep the language, because the same bullshit that was going on with Cointelpro, the same nonsense J. Edgar Hoover is doing, the NSA is capable and willing to do with certain classifications to include and not be limited to so-called incels. Yeah. And that's the point I really want to drive home with this and why we need to push back on this clearly and decisively. Again, the object of war is to render your opponent to your will by force. The second object is to do so by disarming them.
Hey,
Sandog,
bro,
go
look. Okay, well, I'm about to let Sandog talk, but at the end of the day, I want to give a shout out to Shocks. He says, "We the unwilling, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful." We have done so much for so long with so little. We are not qualified to do anything with nothing. I think that's a quote from Konstantin Jarachek that he put out there. Thank you so much for your support, my brother. Appreciate that. And he also gave me a shout out earlier, gave me a donation earlier. But also shout out to Queen, also known as Mrs. Sunkiss. Shout out to her. Shocks 12 says, theoretical framework, subordinate mill, a hypothesis, we need a print arm. We already have YouTube for media. We need research articles and constant talking points. Well, we do need constant talking points or consistent talking points, but it's hard to develop it, man, when, a lot of guys are here just for the bag. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate to say that shit, but, a lot of dudes are here for the entertainment value, and they're looking to become influencers and shit like that. They ain't looking to really actually lead a political movement towards anything. They, I hate to say that shit, bro. It's just, and not to say that they don't also have, the best interest of black men at heart, but, what do you do when you'll do anything for a like? Or you'll you'll direct your conversation in order to get a click or more subscribers or followers.
You know what I mean? It's so bad. They're actually taking clips of people, replaying them out of context, doing live streams, and having folks like divestors report these folks and claim to make inquiries into the FBI. I mean, this is how serious some of this stuff is getting now. Like, what we're doing here, really, it's on par with what we're describing. Anytime black men move in any modality of power, whether it be physical or non-physical, that fear of Negro rule modality kicks in. This culture was not designed, nor was it ever intended for us to be competitive. The United States doesn't compete, it removes its competition. It doesn't negotiate, it coheres. And even though it's being put into an era where those aren't really real options anymore, at the very least, it continues to do so against us because we don't have apparatus of pushback, which is what we're trying to actually create. If you don't establish that line of scrimmage, there's no progress forward you can make. And when everybody's doing this bootstrap-ism, John Henry-ism, individualism, this 99% equal 1% equal 50-50 nonsense, this is what we get. We're not up here to do this because we want to be entertained. Man, I could be playing video games right now. We're saying this because your livelihood on here could be at stake for not paying attention to these modalities, to not paying attention to these principles, to not understanding the context under which the history took place. And ultimately that falls on us. But understand this is not a game. Gigi, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I really wanted to drive that point home.
Sandog, man, talk to us, man, and then get us out of here, bro.
Yeah, man. So no, but again, and that's what I'm saying. So when you remember, we talked about this before. It was presented before under the ideology of operational diplomacy, right? Your ideas, your goals, how you establish credibility. So these will be, at least to my knowledge, along the lines of the 10 steps of operational diplomacy. And so again, as the body of work, as the language evolves, I think that you will, I think that you'll start to see the progress that we're making. Because I understand that, a lot of people will say, or some people feel that it's moving too slow. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna be honest with you. From the way Sandog sees life, we won't see the end of this condition until the 2200s. And so a lot of us will be gone, man. So, in the interim, you could lay down the breadcrumbs of what will be that Wakanda in the future that hopefully you could look down from heaven, and smile on. But it goes back to, what we're saying. I believe that we all agree is that, in this space now, there has to be an evolution, and one of the main points of that evolution is what Dr. T. Hassan Johnson has put forward, and it's something that we should all review, that we should all participate in, and discuss, and then eventually you'll have a framework written on paper that dictates what it is that you want. Your goals are written out and clear, and then you can take it and you can move forward from there.
Well, look, BGS just put out a new video. I just saw it, as I looked out of my peripheral vision, man. I want him to plug that real quick. If he can come on real fast. I don't know if he's even in a position to where he can come on, but if he can, plug that real quick. And, all I can say is, man, we dealing with a system that, has always tried to repress us and to prevent us from being the best we can be. And we need to resist against it, man. It just is what it is. I mean, that to me is the quintessential issue. What do we do? And I don't feel like I should be the one to develop the entirety of what black people should be doing. That's how we fail.
Cool.
It's setting up systems and institutions and ideals. That's how shit carries itself forward to where, it's like you fuck with one of us, it's just 3 or 4 more coming. It's like cutting off the head of Hydra.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know, man. If BGS don't come, man, I'm about to sign off, man. I mean, we already know we've been the enemies of the state for the longest time. We've been the targets and the whipping boys. We've been the ones that they've come after. So all we can do is just keep our heads up, man, and develop a plan and try to do the best we can to get through this grid. But it doesn't help if, we have Stockholm syndrome and, I mean, it's like we don't even read our own history. We don't study our own history.
And when we don't get the context of it all, which is just as bad, if not worse in some instances, because then outcome bias kicks in. You don't even know what the hell you're looking at anymore.
Man. Well, anyway, man, I'm about to cut this short, man. I'm about to go ahead and get out of here. I thank you, gentlemen, for spending your time. And Nameless, man, you got to tell me when, well, there he goes. BGS, what's cracking, man?
Hey, what's going on, Doc?
What's happening? I didn't mean to put you on the spot, man, and make you pull up
well,
here.
I had to find my headphones, so I didn't expect to come up, when I'm in mod mode.
Right. And thank you so much for doing that for us here today, man. I appreciate all the work and the help you provide, man. And, I look at it like this, man. I'm on the nano level, bro, of influence in this space. Like, I'm under 10,000 subscribers, man. I'm not like...
well, the thing is that numbers don't always dictate impact, okay? I had more impact at 500 subscribers than most people had at 100,000, okay?
True that.
Because impact, okay? Just by you being here, okay, scares the shit out of most people in this space, especially YouTube, okay? By your knowledge, your brain, what you have in your head, and your position, okay? Your title itself scares the shit out of people, okay? So don't take don't take that because you have a low subscriber count as a indication of your impact in the space. You have a large impact in the space. You just don't know about it yet. And like I was telling Doc years ago, okay, when he had less than you had, okay, your impact hasn't even started to be felt. It's just now starting to be felt. That's what I was trying to tell him.
Well, I ain't gonna stop. It's not like I'm tired. I'm even amping it up now. I'm kind of like, okay, every week I'm gonna post not only live videos, but also I'm gonna give you my take on international and national politics and on bullshit politics, on nigga shit with the hip hop news. So and eventually what I'm going to end up doing is doing a segment on Black history, as well as a segment on spirituality. And, like psychological upliftment, because a lot of us have a negative conception of our own selves. And we don't think we're valuable.
the fact that you guys are here, because we used to have a lot of so-called smart-ass feminists try to attack this space. Once you guys came here, they run for the hills. They don't even come here.
I think the term is one tiger in the valley and 10,000 deer dare not cross.
Yeah, literally,
And,
that's what's happening.
my problem with the feminists has not been that, they don't have any kind of political argument to make on their own behalf. I just don't like how they do it at our expense. And also I think that, they've already won their war. They've, for the most part, all of their objectives have been fulfilled. Now they're moving into overdrive. They're trying to do some extra and some different shit.
They're
They
trying,
don't want to just be on parity. They want domination.
Well, basically, let's call a spade, right? Okay. We don't have a patriarchy in the United States anymore. It's a matriarchy. Okay. Look at all the laws. Look at who it benefits. Look at all the positions, the money, the education, and look at the leadership class. Right. This is a matriarchy. So is what it is. Okay. They keep fooling you by calling it a patriarchy. This hasn't been a patriarchy for 100 years. It's a matriarchy. And basically, when the black community, you have a gynocracy inside a matriarchy. That's what you have. Okay. All we have is an illusion. All we have is an illusion of a patriarchy, right? And basically, with your help, we're slaughtering that idea. Okay, we're actually slaughtering.
I can
all
prove to you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but one of the things that I wanted to use as an example to demonstrate that that's the case, like take for example what's happening currently with Kanye West.
Yes.
What is one of the things that he's saying over and over again on these social media outlets? His kids have been taken from him.
Mm-hmm.
The patriarchy of the father is dead. The empire of the father's done.
Right.
Okay. Or take, for example, 50 Cent and what's happening with his son Marquise.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be a billionaire, millionaire dude, and your kids, you still don't have access to them if that woman decides that she's not going to give you access to them.
Yeah, because they're not even hers. But but go ahead.
So at the end of the day, you got to be aware. Like you can see everything that we're discussing and that we're saying theoretically, concretely through specific examples. Okay, but people won't see it that way because they'll see the influence and the power that these men have in other domains. They'll be like, well, he's rich and he can do what he wants and he has more power than any of his, the mothers have or whatever the case may be. But I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, but me, you, Nameless, and even Sandog, right? We're not here to basically count, really bring down their infrastructure. We're here to actually go into the files and the little nugget that they keep hidden, they talking shit, and we pull out the little paper. Okay, what about this little paper that we neglected to talk about? And the first thing they say, I remember my brother was actually in a lawsuit with his job, right? And he pulled out a document, right? First thing the lawyer said, "You're not going to use that, are you?" Like the 1660 thing about the court of the court of chancery, right? We have judges. When you pull that out, you're not really going to use that, are you? You goddamn right, we're going to use this. Just like Clark's book, right? Okay, we're talking all this shit about this, that, and the other. Okay. Oh, Tangle pathology. Oh, that's not the Monahan report's not real. Oh, really? What about Kenneth Clark? This is where it came from. You're not going to use that, are you? Yes, we goddamn right we're going to use it. That's what we're here for. We're here to tell the emperor that you ain't got no goddamn clothes on. But go ahead.
And so one of the things that I want to do with you, man, if you want to allocate some time to doing it, is I sent you an email. I don't know if you had the time to look at it.
I saw it. Yeah, I'm on it. I just
it's a long book.
Yeah, I got to finish Clark's book, but yeah, I'm on it. Okay, that'll be my next one, my next read.
But we need to read segments of that work to these brothers, and a lot of it is, to me, to some extent, it's pro-film to me, but it's worth a look at because at least he takes Kenneth Clark seriously.
Yeah. Whereas
a lot of these people don't at all. They just dismiss it because, oh, that's old patriarchal bullshit, but. All it is kicking the can down the road and refusing to give an honest, hard look at the condition of black men in this country and
Yeah.
the impact that the neglect of dealing with the political situation of black men, how it has on the broader community. And
Yeah.
it's not just happening to black people now. Like the two, this is the chickens coming home to roost shit
Yeah.
that I keep talking about. Or the injustice anywhere having a threat on justice everywhere. If you
Yeah.
allow this bullshit to happen in our
Yeah. That's
community,
your fester. Yeah.
now this shit is festering in the world now. It's beginning to have
It is
an
global.
impact on world family construction.
It is global.
And Nameless is talking about this in his Hive Theory. You've talked about it in your Mouse Utopia conversation. You know, it's
You
the
can go.
weakening. Go ahead.
You can go back to Carol Quigley. That's why I would suggest the book Tragedy and Hope and his book, The Evolution of Civilization. He said it because he examined all these civilizations, right? First thing Quigley focused on was not on civilization, right? He focused on culture. Okay. Why he focused on culture? Culture is what builds everything else. Okay. If you change, he said, you know, that's why his equation, biology and environment equals culture, right? You change any one of those two variables, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get change in the culture, the change of the trajectory of any society, right? He said, if you change the physical environment, okay, these 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 are these these are physical items that will change your culture. And this, so in other words, if you go post-industrial, me and Nameless have documented this for the past 2 or 3 years, right? Maybe 4. You go post-industrial, this shit will show up. I don't care where it is. Okay. You think,
You
well,
spoiling my video for tomorrow,
all
BDS.
right. Well, I'm giving them a highlight because trust and believe, man.
They need to hear this though. Go
What
ahead,
I'm
fam.
saying, I can explain it. But the thing is, they won't believe it until you demonstrate it. Okay.
Well,
I mean, they can
last but
see
not
it in the birth rates. But go ahead, fam. Go ahead.
but
Birth rates, feminism, marriage rates, the effect on the men. Okay, lying flat, the disillusion of the Generation Z, the what they call it, the grass eaters in Japan. Okay, the what it is, the nihilism that's going on in Europe. That's all the same thing. Okay, we call it different shit. What do they call it? The great resignation is happening in the United States amongst the millennials and Gen X, right during COVID. It's all the same thing. Okay, we just call it different shit. But anyway, go ahead, Doc.
so what I want you to do, man, take us home, man. We've done enough today, man. We at the 2 hour and 37 mark. I think,
Okay,
you know, but you just put a new video out and it's about SYSBM versus SYCBM. I don't even know what
right.
the fuck
Oh,
SYCBM is. So
SYCBM is basically basically that's OB's and I think Courtney Michelle's thing called Save Your Community Black Man. It's just a riff on what the Black nationalist argument said, that you don't need to, you need black men to need to come back to the community and save it again, right? Fix your women, fix your community, and you have to sacrifice. And what Courtney Michelle is why should, and she was actually right. She might not have been right about a whole bunch of stuff, but she was actually right about this. Why should black men sacrifice another 30 years? Okay, 40 years. They gave you civil rights. They gave you 40 years, and this is what you did with it. So why should they trust you with another 30 to get yourself
yeah,
correct? Because, and I said, what they're talking about, just about talking to understand each other. In my video, I said, the time for talking is over. Okay, that shit's over, because if you really knew what's going on in the next 10 years, much less the next 30, you wouldn't be saying that. You don't have time to talk. You have to act. Okay, and if you don't act, it's done. If you don't act within the next 5 years, it's probably done. And black men are right to bail, because like I said, when I, like my Clark's video, right? This tangle of pathology has inundated the whole black community from top to bottom. There is no sanctuary, okay? From the politicians and leaders on top, all the way down to the folks in the projects. It's this ghetto culture that Clark warned about is through and through the whole core, okay? It's going to take 4 generations just to reverse what's already happened. And the thing is, what I said in my video, I said before, it's simple physics, right? Okay, if something is accelerated, before you can reverse, you have to slow it down, stop it, and then reverse, right? We haven't even stopped it from accelerating. Okay, you got Megan Thee Stallion on Saturday Night Live, right? You got Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion at the fucking White House, cheered on by the vice president. That's
How in
not
the
Twerking and
world?
slowing.
shit.
That's not slowing shit down. That's accelerating this negative culture. What are you talking about? I said,
And that's
and
not even
you
talking about
go ahead.
roles, right?
Huh?
That's not even considering the way we demonize roles in this nuclear family model they claim they want to participate in, right?
What I'm saying is, okay. What I'm saying, number one, okay, there's two. Okay, and I don't want to take up Doc's time too much. Okay,
My fault.
no. What I'm saying is, well, we can touch on it, right? There's two things, right? Okay, number one, you gotta understand this shit didn't start today. It started in 1804 when industrial capitalism, when you took the women and children out of the house because you wanted them to work in the fucking factories. Okay, these chicks started working. Guess what they didn't want to do? They didn't want to be under her husband anymore. That's why the 1804, there was all these chicks, common chicks, were filing for divorce, and the government had to handle this stuff, right? That's how come you got. That's what Carolyn Norton built her whole theory on, right? I said you're changing the paradigm of the way there's your society works with this industrial capitalism. Women are not working at home; they're working in factories. They're independents, right? So what do you have to do? What do you have to give them? You have to give them a fair shot at their kids, right? That's why they passed the custody of infants, okay, which is minor, 7 years, right? And they expanded upon it. That's what it's built on. Feminism did not come out of a freaking vacuum, right? It's built on two things: industrial capitalism and what Gigi pointed out, the social contract, going all the way back to Hobbes. Okay, that's what it's built on. Socialism, communism, all that stuff. Communism is nothing but authoritarian socialism. That's all it is. Okay, it's nothing magic about it, right? What you have in the West, even the United States, is liberal socialism, because you can't have the abuses. You can't treat uh, uh, regular people, free people, like slaves, right? Okay, you're working them like fucking slaves 6 days a week, because slaves have to work from can't see to can't see 6 days a week, and they get off on Sunday, right? You're working your people just like that. Okay, you can't work regular people like that, otherwise they're going to tear down the system. Socialism will come in as, okay, basically, guess what? We're going to get workers' rights. We're going to give your kids education. Okay, we're going to take them off the streets, take them out of the factories, and educate them. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, you're actually going to rip up your society. You can't make slaves out of regular people. Okay, so this is where it's all coming from. You change your environment. Okay, you change your environment, your physical environment. You change your social environment, and the people have to change. Well, feminism didn't come out of nowhere. The thing is, do we understand it, and how can we work with the environment that we're in? And that's what we're here to do. Me, you, Nameless, Gigi, and Dr. T. Okay, let's stop taking the talking points and narratives and overlooking the stuff that's true. Nobody talks about Clark's book. They talk about Moynihan because they don't want to talk about Clark. Clark saw all this bullshit in the 40s when he did the fucking doll test. Everything that Clark saw, Kenneth and Mamie Clark saw back in the 40s, he just updated and put it into that book, Dark Ghetto. And and everything that he said in that book has come true 60 years later. That's how I look at a book, especially an old book, right? What did he see? You could argue any book. If Gigi wrote a book today, right? We can argue about it, right? Motherfucker's wrong. He
Right.
don't know what the fuck he's talking about. But in 50 years, what he said comes true. Guess what? Gigi
He was
right.
right.
You're right.
Hell yeah.
You can't argue about that, because what he prescribed 60 years ago is right, is happening today. That means the motherfucker's right. You can't argue about that shit. That's why I like old books.
I
Anyway,
BTS,
feel you.
that book is almost $200.
what? It
Dark
probably is
Ghetto.
now. It probably is now
Right.
because everybody's trying to buy it. Okay.
Right.
After I put it out there, everybody's trying to buy it now. But
Put the
email me.
PDF out there. Shit. Fuck all that.
It's yeah.
I'm saying that to prove a point that if it was worth nothing, they wouldn't be jacking the price up like that.
You know what? When rare books like that, you start mentioning them, and people do listen. Okay, even people that you don't not aware of. Okay, and when the book is hot, the book is hot. When there's truths inside of a book, that book is gonna start disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you see. And because when I bought my copy, my copy was $6.
Yeah, well,
Funny.
$6.
you need to make a deal with some of these bookshops, man. But anyway, man, we need to cut this short,
I,
man. You know,
I,
we
I,
already
I'm,
we
I'm waiting for the unknown professor to actually write his book so we can pump that bad boy up.
right. There you go. There you
we,
go,
we
man.
we can't reveal him right now. We have to wait to the end of the season
There you
to
go.
unmask him.
Eventually I will be unmasked. You give me my
Yeah,
time, brother.
you doing your time.
Give me
What
my
is it?
time.
You
I will
reclaim your
unmask.
time. Reclaim your time, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But
All right.
anyway, man, it's a pleasure, man, to have a conversation with all of you guys, man. The only thing we tried to do, you know, is to just explain that like black men have never just sat on their hands and did nothing, even though what they've done hasn't been, you know, absolutely effective at combating the pressures from the powers that be. We've mitigated some of them, okay? And we ought to be proud of that. And we ought to continue that legacy, but we have to modify it
But
because
you
the
know what?
conditions are changing.
You know what I'm really pissed off, especially about black women and black feminists. Okay,
Go ahead.
you fucking disenfranchise a third of Generation X black men. Okay, disenfranchise these motherfuckers, and nobody said shit. It pisses me off. You don't say shit. You just blame the niggas for being fucked up, but you don't say nothing about America disenfranchising a third of your black men. You said nothing.
Well, that's
Zero.
because they were getting their 30 pieces of silver, man. They were using
No, man.
the wind from they were ducking dovetailing white women. And I mean, you know, like I said before, I mean, maybe if I was a black woman, who knows? I might have done the same shit, but I doubt it. You know, my whole thing is, look, Tommy Curry has just recently, man, like done some masterful work, man, and has the academic community itself on alert. Like, look,
Mhm,
all this shit that is caked up to be and propped
mhm,
up to be, it ain't
mhm.
exactly what it is. Like, all of this shit was really a backlash to black men being granted the 13th Amendment.
Yep.
You know, like, I mean, at the end of the day, what you saw was white women, you know, rear up in
Mhm.
anger
Yeah.
and attitude at niggas having, you know, so-called more political influence than they did.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Even Title VII with affirmative action.
So, I mean, you know, the whole thing is these regressive, savage niggas don't need to be lords over us.
Yeah.
They don't need to have social influence over us.
Yep.
And so what you see is this back and forth between white women protesting black men. Like, they don't come out and say that shit today. They'll come out and just say something like, well, we need to elevate black women, or we all
Yeah.
women in the struggle together, or some shit
Yeah.
like that.
Yep. Yep.
You
And
know,
black women are tools for it. So here's what it is.
but the impact is just the same. And to them, you know, because they're so married to the ideology, I mean, and it's because we've given over our education of the education of our children to these people. So they get
Yeah.
to, like, I remember talking to the chairperson of the philosophy department, you know, where I
Mhm.
received my PhD. And one of the things
Mhm.
he said was, and it resonated with me. He told me, first of all, you got a world-class education. You got one of the best educations in philosophy you can get, okay?
Mhm.
But one thing we know as an institution that's dedicated to education is that we get to reshape the trajectory of the future
Yes.
by
Yes.
shaping the minds of today.
Yes.
That's what we get to do.
Mhm.
That's the power we have as an institution of higher learning. Because
Mhm.
what we teach you, you're going to teach others.
Mhm.
The ideas we embed within you, you're going to proliferate amongst the population. So
Mhm.
we gave over, you know, our ability to indoctrinate, influence our own people, man. You know, we gave it up willingly. So
Mhm.
you know, that's it's a hard pill to swallow. But you know, I mean, to expect that people are going to find out what the truth is, every individual on their own, or develop a strategy, each individual on his own, to be able to mitigate this terrible disaster
Mhm.
is nonsensical. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen, man.
So what have you ever this big ass great bowl of soup that you just cooked up, okay, and getting ready to eat, and some Negro throws a fly in it? Are you gonna eat it?
No, bro, not me personally,
We
but
we here to throw flies in the soup, okay? It's all we can do. But thing is,
that's all we can do, bro.
it has a big effect. Ask Stacey Abrams. about the flies in her soup.
Well, but it's, that's going back to, the ancient philosopher Socrates. That's what they called him, man, a gadfly.
Gadfly, huh? That's what hey, okay.
He's a
Let's
gadfly,
if that's all we have, that's the position we have to play. We got to play our position to the best of our ability. That's all we can do. That's what we left with.
Well, anyway, gentlemen, man, it was a pleasure to have you here. Go check out BGS's new video, man. Go check out the one he recently did with Dr. Tia-San Johnson, man. Y'all always come up with great content as far as I'm concerned. I appreciate all you brothers, man, especially those coming in to have this conversation with me, like Dogg and the Nameless Protagonist. I just don't want the Nameless to fall off because the schedule has changed. We'll work around you, so let me know, when you're available, and we can continue these kind of discussions, bro.
I definitely appreciate it. I'll let you know my time in the back chat. And you can always reach me in mail, fam, anytime.
For sure. I know, you and Dogg have been the ones who've been coordinating the communication related to this series. So I'll communicate with you directly because I don't want it to drop. I think it needs to be carried on into the future. That's just my opinion.
It does. It does. And plus every thing is, even though you don't get a whole lot of views off things like this, this is the building block for the rest of everything else. So then you can bring in trending topics and popular media and refer back to this video as the building block. Okay, this is what it's based on.
For sure.
That's how you do it.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyhow.
For sure. Well, anyway, thank you, Kalanja Kala, and thank you, Shocks 112, and thank you to all the people who've helped me on Cash App. I want to read those names off now, if I can find them. Thank you to Kenty Mitchell, Toya the Texan, appreciate it. Bennett, Greg Wilson, 3000 GT Atlanta, Corbett Goodwin, Malcolm Collins. Appreciate your donations and your help, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. And shit, we gonna holler at y'all on the next one, man.
All right. One last thing, right? I said this name was a long time ago, right? Okay. The generals are here, with the PhDs, and goddamn it, we got an army. Okay. All right.
There you go.
But I'm out on that one.
All right, bro. Peace.
Os.